She said it before she could stop herself quiet, certain and completely irreversible. Cole Barrett stood 3 feet away with mud on his boots and the word blessed still hanging in the air between them, and Addie Monroe looked straight at him and said, "I was hoping it would be you." No softening, no apology. Just 9 words dropped into the silence like a stone into still water. Cole stopped breathing. He had spent 11 years building a life that didn't need anyone in it. He had said something kind to a stranger and accidentally handed her the key to everything he'd been protecting. If this story already has your heart, drop your city in the comments. Subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. The afternoon Cole Barrett said those words, he had not slept properly in 4 days. He had been fixing a wagon wheel outside Granger's feed store, crouched in the dirt with his sleeves rolled to the elbow, working a bent iron rim back onto a cracked spoke hub that had no business surviving another winter. The work kept his hands busy. That was the point of most of the work Cole did, to give his hands something to do, so his mind would not wander into places it had no right going. He heard the commotion before he saw it. A young rancher named Bo Elliott, barely 20 years old, was trying to lead a bay mare toward the hitching post outside Lindell's boarding house. The horse was not cooperating. Her right foreleg was bleeding just below the knee, a shallow cut from the look of it, but enough to set her nerves on fire, and she was throwing her head and pulling back against the lead rope in short, panicked bursts. Bo was scared. Cole could see it in the way the boy held the rope too tight and kept yanking instead of releasing, which only made the mare more terrified. Cole stood up ready to cross the street. He stopped. A woman was already there. She came from the direction of the boarding house, moving quickly, but without rushing the way a person moves when they have done something 1,000 times, and know that speed and calm are not the same thing. She said something to Bo that Cole couldn't hear. The boy released the rope immediately, something Cole would not have done at 20. Something most grown men wouldn't do on instinct. The woman took the lead herself, not by grabbing it, but by simply placing her hand near the clip and waiting until the rope settled into her palm naturally. Then she went still, not frozen, not tense, just still, like she had all the time in the world, and the horse was the most important thing in it. The mare's head dropped 3 inches in under a minute. Cole didn't move. He wasn't sure he breathed. He had worked with difficult horses his entire adult life. He knew what it took to quiet a frightened animal. Patience, presence, the ability to become something that doesn't threaten. Most people couldn't do it. Most people thought they were doing it while the horse got worse. This woman was doing it. The mare stood shivering, but she was standing. The woman ran her free hand slowly down the injured leg, checked the cut, pressed 2 fingers alongside the wound to feel for heat, and then looked up at Bo and said something that made the boy's shoulders drop with relief. Cole crossed the street. He didn't plan to. His feet just went. "You need anything for that leg?" he said when he got close enough. "I've got some salve and bandaging at the wagon." The woman looked up at him. She was younger than he expected, mid-20s, maybe a touch older, with brown hair pulled back loose and dust on the hem of her skirt. Her eyes were steady in a way that Cole found immediately uncomfortable. The way a person's eyes are steady when they have already decided not to be afraid of you. "Clean bandaging would help," she said. "Salve too, if it's the kind that won't set." "It won't set." "Then yes, thank you." Cole went back to the wagon, retrieved the tin and the strips of cloth he kept rolled in a canvas pouch, and returned. She took them from him without ceremony and went to work on the mare's leg. Her hands were practiced. She didn't fumble, didn't hesitate, didn't look to Bo or Cole for confirmation that she was doing it right. She knew she was doing it right. Cole watched her finish. Bo said something grateful and led the mare, much calmer now, toward the water trough. The woman stood and handed the leftover bandaging back to Cole. "You're new," Cole said. He wasn't certain why he said it. He knew she was new. Everyone in Red Willow knew she was new. 3 weeks, she said. "Where from?" "Billings most recently. Before that, Laramie." She paused, and something moved through her expression that she controlled quickly. "My father was a schoolteacher. We moved where the work was." Was. He passed in March. Cole held the bandaging in his hand and did not say he was sorry, because she had not said it in a way that invited condolence. She had said it the way people say things they have already made peace with or are trying to. "You're the one May Lindell took in," he said. "I'm renting a room. She didn't take me in." The correction was mild, but exact. Cole filed it away without knowing why. He looked at the mare now drinking steadily at the trough, and then back at the woman. And because he was tired and hadn't slept, and the moment was clean and simple, and he was not thinking about what he was about to say, he said it. "Some cowboy's going to be blessed with you someday." He meant it as a compliment. He meant it the way a man means something when he sees something worth noticing, and says so without thinking. He expected her to smile faintly the way women did when a man said something harmless and slightly clumsy and then walk away. She didn't walk away. She became very quiet. She looked at him not shyly, not with embarrassment, with the particular expression of someone who has made a decision and is in the last moment before acting on it. Like a person standing at the top of a cold river, knowing they're about to jump. Then low and clear she said, "I was hoping it would be you." Cole Barrett had survived a roof collapse at 22, a cattle stampede at 28, and a winter storm that killed 2 of his horses and nearly killed him at 31. He was not a man who startled easily. He stood there like she had hit him with a plank. "You don't know me," he said. His voice came out rougher than he intended. "I know enough." "That's not—" He stopped, tried again. "We've never spoken before today. I know." She held his gaze without flinching. "That's not the same as not knowing someone." Cole looked at her for a long moment. Then he looked away at the street, at nothing in particular, at the ordinary business of Red Willow, carrying on around them as if nothing unusual had just happened. "That's a brave thing to say to a stranger," he finally said. "I'm tired of being careful," she said. "Careful didn't save my father. Careful didn't keep me anywhere. I'd rather say the wrong thing to the right person than spend another year saying nothing to everyone." Cole looked back at her. She was watching him without apology, without anxiety, without any of the performance he had learned to associate with interactions between men and women who did not yet trust each other. She was just watching him honest as weather. "I'm Cole Barrett," he said. "I know who you are." She picked up the canvas pouch he had left on the hitching post and handed it back to him properly. "I'm Adeline Monroe. People call me Addie." "People call me Cole." "I know that too." She left before he could find anything else to say. Cole stood on the street for a moment, holding his canvas pouch, watching her walk back toward the boarding house, and then he went back to the wagon wheel he had been fixing and crouched down in the dirt again and stared at the bent iron rim and did not touch it for approximately 10 minutes. What Cole Barrett knew about himself was this. He was a man who had built his entire adult life around the practice of not wanting too much. His ranch sat at the foot of the mountain range east of Red Willow, where the land was beautiful and difficult in equal measure. Good grass in the summers. Brutal, relentless winters that came early and stayed late. A creek that ran strong through the North Field from April to September and then slowed to a trickle in October, which meant careful management of every drop of water the property held. I had 2 permanent ranch hands, elderly. Pete Granger, who had worked the land longer than Cole had owned it, and a younger man named Hob Sellers, who was reliable about 3/4 of the time, which in ranching terms made him valuable. They ran about 60 head of cattle, kept a rotating string of 8 horses, and supplemented income through occasional contract work for neighboring ranches. It was a lean life, most years a good one. Cole had inherited the ranch at 26 when his uncle died without other family. Before that, he had drifted, working other men's land, learning everything he could about horses and cattle and water and weather, accumulating skills and saving money, and telling himself he would know where to put down roots when he found the right place. His uncle's land was the right place. He had known it the moment he stood in the North Field and felt the creek running cold over his boots. He had stayed. He had built. What he had not built and had not tried to build was anything resembling a personal life. Red Willow knew him as a quiet man. Dependable. Appeared when he was needed and disappeared when he wasn't. Never caused trouble. Never started rumors. Never turned away a neighbor who needed a hand. May Lindell had told him once, slightly exasperated, that he was the most well-regarded man in the county who nobody actually knew anything about, and he had taken that as a reasonable arrangement. He had come close to something like love once at 30, with a woman named Ruth, who was visiting her sister in town. They had talked for 3 weeks, and she had seemed to understand him in the particular way people sometimes do when they are passing through without expectation, without pressure. Then she went back east where she came from and wrote him 2 letters, and then didn't write anymore. Cole had understood. He had not let himself be surprised by it. After that, he stopped allowing himself to begin things he couldn't finish. Pete Granger was sitting on the porch step when Cole got back to the ranch that evening, which was not unusual. What was unusual was the folded paper in Pete's hand. "Ryder came by," Pete said. "Left this for you." Cole took the paper, unfolded it. It was a debt notice, printed on formal stationery, the kind used by banks and legal offices, with a header that read, "First Territorial Bank of Billings Office of Collections." The notice stated that Cole Barrett, holder of a parcel at the legal description listed below, had an outstanding loan balance of $3,200 due in full within 60 days, per the terms of an agreement signed in April of 1882. Cole read it twice. "That's not right," he said. "I didn't think so," Pete said. "You ever do business with a Billings bank?" "Never." Cole folded the paper again slowly. "I bought this land outright. Cash from my uncle's estate. There was never a loan. So somebody made an error." "Somebody did something," Cole said, and his voice was careful and flat, in the way it got when he was more unsettled than he wanted to show. "I went inside and sat at the table with the paper. For a long time, turning it over, reading the language, looking at the signature line at the bottom, where someone had signed D. Faro Regional Collections Officer in handwriting that slanted hard to the right. He looked at the header again. First Territorial Bank of Billings. He thought about the woman he had met that afternoon. She had come from Billings. He told himself that was a coincidence, and went to bed and lay awake for 2 more hours before sleep finally took him. The next morning, Cole went to see May Lindell. May ran the boarding house and had run it for 19 years and knew more about what moved through Red Willow than any 2 other people combined. She was not a gossip. She was accurate, which was different. She only repeated things she had verified, and she only verified things she considered worth the effort. Cole found her in the kitchen with her sleeves rolled up and flour on her hands. "You want coffee?" she said without looking up from the dough. "Please." He sat. "Who's staying here right now?" "Adeline Monroe, room 3. Mr. Douglas Farlow, room 1. Tom Breckett passed through 2 nights ago, but moved on." She glanced at him. "Why? Farlow," Cole said. "What do you know about him?" May's hands slowed slightly in the dough. "Came in 10 days ago. Says he's a cattle broker. Looking at ranches in the area, potential buying opportunities." She paused. "He pays on time. Polite enough. Keeps to himself mostly." "But..." May looked at him then full on. "I don't like the way he reads the room," she said. "Every time someone mentions a name or a piece of land, he gets a certain quality of attention, like he's filing it." "Has he mentioned my name?" May was quiet for a moment. "Once. Asked Pete Granger about the Barrett ranch when Pete was in for supplies yesterday. Asked about the water situation." Cole absorbed that. The water situation. The creek. Whether it runs through the North Field year-round. Cole looked at his coffee. "Why would a cattle broker care about my creek?" he said, though he already suspected he wasn't going to like whatever answer existed. "That's the question, isn't it?" May said. She went back to the dough. "There's something else. He and Vera Hutchins were talking on the porch last night, past 9. I don't usually consider that significant, but Vera doesn't generally socialize with men she doesn't know, and they were talking quiet." Vera Hutchins was the wife of the dry goods clerk. A woman Cole had always understood to be harmless, if relentless, with her opinions. He thought about her talking quietly on a porch past 9 with a cattle broker who had asked about his water. "Thank you, May," he said. "Cole." She said it as he stood. He looked at her. "That girl in room 3. She asked me about you this morning." He went still. "She asked what kind of man you were," May said. "I told her you were the kind who shows up when it's needed and doesn't make a fuss about it." She turned back to the dough. She seemed satisfied with that. Cole did not go looking for Addie Monroe that day. He told himself he had work to do, which was true. He rode the fence line in the east pasture and found a downed post he'd missed the week before. He checked the water level in the North Creek, a habit now. After May's words about Farlow's questions, and made a note that the flow was slower than it should be for this time of year. He worked until the light started going amber and then rode back to the barn. Addie was there, not waiting for him, not positioned at the barn door with purpose, not arranged in any way that suggested she had timed her arrival to his return. She was standing at the fence of the paddock where he kept the 2 horses he was currently working with, and she was watching the gray gelding in the near corner, with that same quality of focused stillness he had seen the day before with the mare. She heard him coming and turned. "I'm not here to impose," she said immediately. "May mentioned you had a gray that had been giving you trouble. I was out walking, and I went further than I intended, and ended up here. I can go." "You walked 4 miles," Cole said. She considered this. "I like walking." "That gray has been difficult for 6 weeks," Cole said. "He was a bad break. Previous owner didn't know what he was doing. I can see that." She looked back at the gelding. "He's holding his weight wrong, his back left. There's something wrong with how he's landing." Cole had noticed the same thing, but had not been able to diagnose it. He had assumed it was the break itself, a residual issue. He swung down from his horse and led him to the rail. "What do you think it is?" he said. "I'd need to watch him move. But the way he's standing, he's overcompensating on the right. Whatever is hurting isn't the leg, it's the hip. If you've been working him like a leg injury, you've been working him wrong." Cole looked at the gray, then at her. "Come look at him tomorrow," he said. "In daylight." "All right," she said. "And I'll ride you back tonight. 4 miles is too far on foot after dark." "I got here on foot. It wasn't dark when you left." He caught himself. "I'm not trying to manage you. I just don't want—" He stopped because he wasn't sure how to finish that sentence without saying something that revealed more than he intended. "You don't want something to happen to me," Addie said simply. "That's right." "All right," she said again. "I'll take the ride." They rode back toward town, mostly in silence, which Cole found comfortable in a way he didn't entirely understand. He was accustomed to silence. He liked silence. But this silence had a different quality, not empty, not avoidant, but companionable. The kind of silence that 2 people only fall into when neither of them is performing. Halfway to town, she said, "Have you ever had trouble with your land title?" Cole pulled his horse up short. She stopped hers and looked at him. "Why do you ask?" he said. Her expression was carefully neutral, but her eyes were doing something, working, searching the way eyes do when a person is deciding how much to say. "I heard something today," she said. "At the feed store. Someone asking about your ranch, asking specifically about the deed history." "Who?" "I didn't see the face. I heard the voice." She hesitated. It was a man's voice, older. He was talking to the clerk, asking how long you'd held the deed, whether there'd ever been any disputes. Cole looked at her for a long moment in the dark. "The debt notice," he said half to himself. "What debt notice?" "Nothing," he said. "Thank you for telling me." "Cole." She said his name for the first time, and he heard something careful in it, careful, but not soft. "If something is happening with your land, if someone is coming after it, you should know that it doesn't always look like a fight at first. Sometimes it looks like paperwork." He stared at her. "You sound like you know something about this." She held his gaze. "I know something about losing things to paperwork," she said. "My father lost his school contract the same way. A notice arrived. It looked official. By the time he understood it was wrong, it was too late." Cole was quiet. The night moved around them, horses breathing wind running along the grass. "What happened to the man who sent the notice?" he said. Addie looked forward toward the lights of Red Willow. "He left before anyone could prove anything," she said. "He moved on to somewhere else." She flicked the reins and the horse moved. Cole watched her for a moment, then followed. In his chest, something that had been quietly tightening all day pulled another notch. The following morning, Addie came to the ranch at first light, as she'd said she would, and Cole watched her work with the gray gelding for 2 hours and understood within the first 20 minutes that she was better with horses than anyone he had ever seen. She did not rush. She did not force. She moved in a language the horse already understood, making adjustments so small they were nearly invisible, and the gelding who had tried to bite Cole's ranch hand, Hob twice in the past month, stood and let her touch his hip and his hind leg and his lower back with complete quiet. "There," she said after a long while. "Left hip flexor. It's been overworked, compensating for a deeper soreness in the right loin. He needs rest on the right exercises and targeted work on the left." She stood back and looked at Cole. "He's not difficult. He's in pain." "Like most difficult things," Pete Granger said from the fence. Cole hadn't noticed Pete drifting over, but Pete had a way of arriving at conversations when he decided they were worth hearing. Addie looked at Pete. "Exactly like that," she said. Pete looked at Cole with the particular expression he used when he thought Cole was being slow about something obvious. Cole ignored it. "I appreciate you coming out," Cole told Addie. "You're welcome to bring me the other horses you're struggling with," she said. "I'm not working much yet in Red Willow. I have time." "That's not charity I'm looking for." "I wasn't offering charity," she said with the mild precision of someone making an exact correction. "I was offering an arrangement. You let me work with your horses. I need horses to work with, and you need someone who can read them properly. That's a trade." Pete made a small sound that Cole recognized as Pete successfully suppressing a laugh. Cole shot him a look. Pete found something extremely interesting about the grain post. "All right," Cole said. "A trade. Good." Addie brushed her hands on her skirt and turned toward the paddock gate. "I'll come Tuesday." She left. Cole watched the road until she was out of sight, then turned to find Pete leaning against the fence with an expression of absolute innocence that fooled neither of them. "Don't," Cole said. "I haven't said a word," Pete said. "Keep it that way." Tuesday came, then Thursday, then the following Tuesday. Addie worked with the gray gelding and the 2 younger mares Cole had brought in from a neighboring ranch's dispersal sale. She came in the mornings, worked steadily, gave Cole assessments that were precise and useful, and delivered without cushion. She told him when he was wrong about something without making a performance of it. She accepted when she was wrong about something, which happened twice with the same lack of ceremony. In between they talked. Not about feelings, not about intention. About horses, about water, about the particular difficulty of north-facing pastures in early spring. About books she had read considerably more than he had, and she lent him a novel without asking whether he wanted it. About her father occasionally, in the sideways manner of people who are still learning which parts of a grief are speakable. About Billings. She mentioned it a 3rd time on the Thursday of that second week. They were sitting on the paddock fence after she'd finished with the gray, who was visibly improving, and the conversation had moved from grain ratios to the town she'd come from. Cole waited until she'd said what she seemed to be building toward saying. "There was a man in Billings," she said, "who made a practice of targeting small operations teachers, small merchants, anyone with a piece of land or a contract that was worth something, but who wouldn't have lawyers or resources to fight back. He'd file false debt claims. The notices looked completely legitimate, proper stationery, legal language, official signatures." "How many people did he do this to?" Cole said. "That I know of 8. That anyone could prove none. He was careful about moving before the truth caught up." "What was his name?" Something moved across her face. "The name I knew him by was Farrell," she said. "Douglas Farrell." Cole looked at her. "Farlow," he said. She met his eyes. "I heard that name when I arrived at May's. I thought it was different enough that I was wrong." She stopped. "Then I saw his handwriting." "Where?" "He left a note for May about breakfast timing. I saw it on the kitchen table." Her voice was steady, but her hands, Cole noticed, were pressed flat against her knees. "The handwriting is the same. The slant. The way he makes his 7s. Cole was quiet for a long moment. Then, "The debt notice I received was signed by someone named D. Farrow." Addie looked at him. "3 names," Cole said. "1 slant. Cole." She turned fully toward him on the fence. Whatever he filed against you, it isn't real. It's a mechanism. He uses the 60-day window to create pressure to make the target feel like they have to act quickly and can't think clearly. He wants you panicked. I'm not panicked, Cole said. I know you're not. She held his eyes. But you need to find out what he's actually after. It isn't the debt. The debt is a tool. Whatever is on your land, whatever makes your ranch worth the effort, that's what he's after. Cole thought of May's question. Why would a cattle broker care about your creek? He thought of the North Field, the creek that ran through it, the way the land sloped funneling water from the mountain range through his property before it reached the valley. Water rights. In a dry year, in a decade of increasingly dry years, water rights in a valley like this one were worth more than the land itself. A man who controlled the primary water corridor for a 20-mile stretch of ranches could dictate terms to every operation that depended on it. Cole's ranch sat on that corridor. He doesn't want my land, Cole said slowly. He wants your water, Addie said. And if he takes your land, the water comes with it. The evening had gone fully dark around them. Inside the barn, Pete was moving around doing the last of the evening chores, lantern light shifting through the cracks in the walls. Cole sat on that fence and understood that the quiet life he had built was standing at the edge of something it might not survive. And the woman sitting beside him, the woman who had said, "I was hoping it would be you 3 weeks ago," and then walked away, had just handed him the one thing that might save it, information she had been carrying alone since the day she arrived. "Addie," he said, "why didn't you tell me this sooner?" She was quiet for a moment. "Because I wasn't certain," she said. "And because," she stopped. "Because what?" "Because I didn't want you to think I came here with this. That I found out you were a target and invented a reason to be near you." She looked at the dark. "I know how that would look." Cole thought about it. He thought about 3 weeks of Tuesday and Thursday mornings, about the gray gelding moving better, about conversations about books and water and grief that nobody performed. He thought about a woman on a fence saying, "I'd rather say the wrong thing to the right person than spend another year saying nothing to everyone." "It doesn't look like that," he said. She turned to look at him. "It looks like someone who was scared of being wrong," he said, and told the truth anyway when she was sure. In the dark and the quiet, she let out a long breath. Not dramatically, just released. "We need to move carefully," Cole said. "If he's watching the ranch, if Vera Hutchins is his informant in town, then anything we do openly he'll know," Addie said. "Right." She nodded once. "Then we don't do anything openly." Cole looked at her. "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking," she said carefully, "that a man like Farrell keeps his documents close. His ledger, his correspondence, the proof of what he's done and plans to do. He needs it to run the scheme. He needs it to stay organized." She paused. "Men like him trust locks. They don't trust people." "His room at May's," Cole said. "He leaves for 3 to 4 hours every afternoon," she said. "I've noticed the pattern." Cole looked at her for a long time. "Addie," he said, "I'm not asking you to put yourself at risk." "I know you're not," she said. "That's not the conversation I'm proposing." The lantern light from the barn shifted as Pete moved. An owl called once from somewhere in the trees along the creek. Cole Barrett sat on that fence and understood with the particular clarity that comes at the end of a day when everything has changed that this was no longer a quiet life holding its shape, and that somewhere in his chest, beneath the worry and the anger and the cold knowledge that something dangerous had arrived in Red Willow, something else was sitting very still, just as Addie had gone still beside the injured mare, waiting to see what would happen next. That night, Vera Hutchins left her house at 8:30 and walked to the boarding house. Cole watched her from the shadow of the alley across the street. He had not planned to be there. He had been passing through town after leaving the ranch, heading home by the long route which he did sometimes when he couldn't get his mind to settle. He saw Vera go up the porch steps. He saw the door to room 1 open and the shape of a man stand in the doorway, tall, heavier-set lamplight catching silver at his temples. He saw Vera step inside. The door closed. Cole stood in the dark for a long moment. Then he went home. In the morning, he would start with Pete, with what Pete knew about the land history, the creek, the corridor. With what Pete had perhaps already noticed about a cattle broker who asked too many questions. Tomorrow, Red Willow was going to start paying attention. And tonight, Cole Barrett, a man who had spent years protecting himself from wanting too much, lay in the dark of his ranch house and thought about a woman on a fence who had given him information she had carried alone for weeks, for no reason other than that she believed it was the right thing to do. Some cowboy's going to be blessed with you someday. He could still hear himself saying it. The clumsy sincerity of it. The way she had gone quiet. I was hoping it would be you. He turned onto his back and stared at the dark ceiling and made himself breathe slowly. He had spent years believing love was something meant for other people. He was beginning to suspect he had been wrong about that. What he did not yet know was how wrong he was about to be, and what it was going to cost him to find out. Pete Granger had worked the Barrett land for 11 years, and in 11 years, Cole had never once seen him sit down at the kitchen table and look like he was carrying something heavy. He looked like that now. Cole had come in before sunrise and put the debt notice on the table between them and told Pete everything: Addie's identification of the handwriting, the name Farrell, the pattern of forged debt claims in Billings the water corridor. He laid it out plainly without editorializing and then sat back and let Pete absorb it. Pete picked up the debt notice. Read it once, read it again. First Territorial Bank of Billings, Pete said. You know it. Pete set the paper down. It closed, he said. Sometime around 82-83. I remember because a man who used to buy cattle through here lost an account there. Made a fuss about it for a season. He tapped the paper. This notice claims a loan was originated in April of '82 and is currently outstanding. Cole leaned forward. A bank that closed in '82 issued a loan in April of '82 and is now collecting on it in '86. That's what this paper says. That's impossible. It is, Pete said. It's also exactly the kind of thing that sounds possible enough to scare a man into paying before he checks. Cole was quiet for a moment. Then, how fast can we verify the bank's closure? I know a man in Billings, postal contact. If I send a letter today, we could have word back in 10 days. 10 days. Cole thought about the 60-day window on the notice. 10 days was manageable, but 10 days also meant 10 more days of Farrell operating freely in Red Willow, asking questions, using Vera Hutchins as his eyes mapping whatever he needed to map before he moved to the next stage of whatever this was. Send it today, Cole said. Don't use your name on the return. Use the ranch address but sign it as the property. Pete gave him a look. I don't want him knowing we're checking, Cole said. Pete nodded once and stood. Cole picked up the debt notice and folded it back into his shirt pocket. Outside, the dawn was just starting to gray the edges of the sky. Somewhere in the north field, the creek was running quiet. He thought whoever controls that water controls this valley for the next 20 years. Then he thought, and Farrell has been in Red Willow for 10 days and already knows exactly where that creek runs. He saddled a horse and rode into town before breakfast. May Lindell was already awake, which was not surprising. What was surprising was that she met him at the back door instead of the front, which meant she had seen him coming and did not want whoever was inside to see him arrive. He's at breakfast, she said quietly, tilting her head toward the dining room. Vera Hutchins is with him. She came in 20 minutes ago on some excuse about a recipe she wanted. They've been talking quiet. Cole stepped inside the kitchen and kept his voice low. May, I need to know something. Does Farlow receive any mail? Any papers? Any correspondence? He received one packet 4 days ago. Thick envelope came with the Tuesday post. He took it straight to his room. Has he had any other visitors besides Vera? 2 men came to see him on Thursday. I didn't know them. They were in his room for an hour and left without speaking to anyone else. She paused. One of them asked me on the way out how far it was to the Barrett ranch. Cole absorbed that without expression. One more thing, he said. The room between his and the staircase room too. Who's in it? Nobody. Mr. Breckett moved on, I told you. I'd like to rent it, Cole said. Starting today. I don't need to stay in it. I just want it occupied by someone I trust. May looked at him for a long moment, with the particular steadiness of a woman who has survived 19 years of a boarding house and learned when not to ask questions. "I'll put the key on your account," she said. "Go out the back the way you came." Addie was at the ranch paddock when Cole returned, already working with the gray gelding on a long line, reading his gait with a focus so complete she didn't hear Cole's horse until he was at the gate. She looked up, read his face. "What happened?" "The bank on the debt notice closed in '82, he said. "The year the loan was supposedly issued." She stopped the gelding. "He's moving faster than I thought. In Billings he usually took longer to set the groundwork." "He's had 10 days, Cole said. "And 2 men visited him on Thursday. Men who asked May how far it was to my ranch." Addie's hand on the lead rope didn't tighten, but her expression went somewhere very still and focused. "Surveyors," she said. "Or men posing as surveyors. He'll want a formal claim on the water corridor before he files anything with a court. The debt notice creates the legal pressure. The survey establishes the value of what he's claiming. So the 60-day window isn't the real timeline. No. The real deadline is whenever he has enough documentation assembled to file a legitimate-looking claim against your land title." She looked at him directly. "Cole, that could be 30 days, maybe less. Then we have less than 30 days to expose what he is before he files." "Yes." She handed him the gelding's lead. "And we have to do it without him knowing we're looking." Cole took the lead. The gray stood easy between them, hip working correctly for the first time in weeks. Cole noticed that without meaning to. The same way he'd been noticing things about this situation without meaning to the precision of it. How carefully each piece had been set in place before he was ever aware there was a board to play on. "Addie," he said. "The packet May mentioned. Thick envelope came Tuesday. That's his documentation from wherever he came from before Red Willow. Names, forged papers, the template he uses." "If we could see that packet." "His room," Coley said. "I rented the one next to it." She looked at him. "I'm not asking you to go in there," he said. "I know you're not," she said, and the way she said it made clear the conversation was not finished, just paused. Hob Sellers Cole's other ranch hand appeared at noon with the particular expression of a man who had overheard something he wasn't sure what to do with. "You've got a visitor," Hob said. Not at the ranch, he was out on the east road looking at the fence line. Didn't come onto the property, just stood on the road and looked. "What did he look like?" Cole said. "Big man, silver at the temples, had a leather case under his arm." Cole said nothing. "I rode up close," Hob said. "Asked if he needed directions. He smiled and said he was just admiring the land. Then he asked me how far the creek ran." The creek again. Always the creek. "What did you tell him?" Cole said. "I told him I was new and didn't know the property well." Hob paused. "I'm not new. I've been here 3 years. But something about the way he was asking didn't sit right." Cole looked at him. Hob was young and somewhat unreliable about punctuality, and had once let a gate latch improperly for 4 days before noticing. But he had good instincts about people. Always had. "You did right," Cole said. "If you see him again, same answer. You're new, you don't know." Hob nodded slowly. "This have something to do with that debt notice Pete mentioned?" "It might," Cole said. "Don't discuss it with anyone. Not in town, not at the feed store, not anyone." Hob looked at him steadily. "Pete said this could be something serious." "It could be." "Then you'll have whatever you need from me," Hob said simply, and went back to the barn. Cole stood at the paddock fence and thought about what Farrell had seen standing on that road. The east fence line. The angle of the land from east to north. The way the creek would be visible from there in certain light, a dark line through the grass catching sky. He thought about a man with a leather case making careful notes. He thought about 30 days, maybe less. Vera Hutchins found Addie at the dry goods store late that afternoon. Addie had gone in for thread and some dried beans. Things she genuinely needed moving through the ordinary business of her day, the way she had trained herself to do in the weeks since arriving quietly, without drawing attention, paying careful attention to what was around her without appearing to. She had learned that skill in Billings. It had kept her safe when safe was the best outcome available. Vera was at the counter when Addie came in. She turned with the expression of a woman who had been waiting for this opportunity. "You're the Monroe girl," Vera said. Not unfriendly exactly, but assessing. "May's border." "I am," Addie said. "I heard you've been spending time at the Barrett ranch, working with his horses." "That's right." Vera tilted her head. She had the particular manner of a woman who collected information by making questions sound like casual conversation. "Funny that you came all the way from Billings to end up in Red Willow. We don't get many people coming from the cities." "My father grew up near here," Addie said. "I wanted to be somewhere that felt like it might have known him." This was true. It was also the kind of truth that answered the surface question while giving nothing away underneath it. "You've met Mr. Farlow, I suppose, at the boarding house," Vera said. "We've passed in the hall," Addie said. Her voice did not change. Nothing in her changed. She had been practicing this, the stillness she used with frightened horses turned inward. "He's a very accomplished man," Vera said. "Knows a great deal about land values in this part of the territory. He was telling me that ranches like the Barrett place are sitting on more value than their owners realize." "Is that so?" Addie said. "The water rights particularly," Vera said. "He says whoever holds the water corridor between the mountain range and the valley floor is sitting on a fortune. Once the settlement keeps growing, that water will be worth—" She stopped as if catching herself. Addie looked at the thread she was holding, then set it on the counter. "That's interesting," she said pleasantly. "I'll take this thread and a pound of beans, please." She paid and left before Vera could redirect the conversation. Outside, walking back toward the boarding house, Addie ran through what Vera had just told her. Not accidentally. Deliberately. Vera had told her deliberately, watching for a reaction, almost certainly reporting back whatever she observed to Farrell. Addie had given her nothing. But Vera had given her something she hadn't intended to. Whoever holds the water corridor is sitting on a fortune. Farrell had told Vera this, which meant Farrell was talking, which meant he was either very confident or slightly careless. And in Addie's experience, men like Farrell became careless when they believed their targets were isolated and uninformed. He didn't know Cole was informed. He didn't know Addie had recognized him. That gap, that window of assumption, was the only advantage they had, and it was going to close the moment Farrell realized Addie Monroe from Billings was not a coincidence. She needed to move before that happened. That evening she went to Cole. She found him in the barn with Pete, both of them bent over a rough map Pete had drawn of the north field and the creek corridor. Cole looked up when she came in. He read her face the same way she'd read his that morning, quickly and accurately. "Vera talked to you," he said. "She told me about the water corridor." Farrell told her. "He's been talking to her freely, which means he doesn't think we know what we know." She looked at the map. "How much of the corridor does your property control?" Pete put his finger on the line representing the creek. "From the mountain range where it comes down through here." He traced it all the way to where it hits the valley floor at the south fence. Roughly 14 miles. "And the ranches below. 4 operations depend on this water, maybe 5 in a dry year. So if he controls Cole's land, he controls water access for 4 or 5 neighboring ranches," Addie said. "He could charge for access. He could restrict it. In a dry season, he could effectively bankrupt everyone downstream." "That's not a cattle broker's scheme," Pete said. "That's a land consortium." Addie looked at him. "You know that term." "I've been reading," Pete said with the dignity of a man who spends his evenings usefully. "There have been operations like this further east. Chicago money buying up Western water rights through local proxies. The proxy gets a cut. The real profit goes back east." Cole straightened. "So Farrell is a proxy." "He's likely the operator," Addie said. "But the money behind him that's larger. That's why he's so careful about documentation and legal appearance. Whoever funds this doesn't want exposure." She paused. "In Billings he moved fast and disappeared before anything could be traced back. Here the prize is bigger. He'll be more thorough, which means more paper." "More paper," Cole said, "means more evidence. If we can get to it." The three of them were quiet for a moment. Then Pete said in the mild tone he used for things that were actually serious, There's something I didn't tell you this morning, Cole. I didn't think it was connected. Now I think it might be. Cole looked at him. 2 months ago, before Farrell arrived, a man came through asking about the property to the north of yours. The Hennessy place. Hennessy's been trying to sell for 2 years and can't find a buyer because the land's rocky. But the man wasn't asking about the Hennessy land itself. I was asking about the access road that runs along the property line, the road that connects to the mountain corridor. He was mapping the approach, Cole said. I think so. I told him I was a ranch hand and didn't know the details. He went away. Pete folded his hands. The man had silver at his temples and a leather case. The barn went very quiet. He was here 2 months ago, Cole said. Scouting, Addie said. Before he came officially. The boarding house, the debt notice, this is the second stage. He's been planning this since before anyone here had a name to put to him. Cole looked at the map. 2 months of preparation. A false identity. An informant inside the town. Forged bank documents. Surveyors. And underneath all of it, a financial interest large enough to be worth that level of effort. This was not a man who would be frightened off by being watched. This was a man who needed to be exposed completely publicly and with evidence that couldn't be dismissed. The next morning, Addie made a decision she did not tell Cole about. She had been turning it over since the night before, sitting with it, the way she sat with difficult horses, patiently waiting to see whether the fear in it was real or just loud. By the time dawn came through her window, she had decided the fear was loud but manageable, and the alternative, waiting, was worse. Farrell left the boarding house every afternoon between 1 and 4. May had confirmed the pattern multiple times without being asked. He took meals. He took meetings in the afternoons away from the building, and during those hours, the room was empty. May was in the kitchen or the laundry and did not go upstairs. The door to room 1 had a lock that used the same key as room 2. She had noticed this when May handed her the spare key Cole had arranged for. Boarding house keys were often standardized. It was a practical economy. She tried the key at 1:15. The door opened. She did not let herself hesitate. Hesitation was how people got caught standing in doorways calculating risk when the risk was already being taken. She moved inside quickly and closed the door behind her. The room was orderly, in the particular way of a man who values organization but not comfort. She looked without touching the surface arrangement of things, where weight sat in the room. A leather case on the table. A wooden box with a small lock on the dresser. Correspondence stacked in a neat pile beside the window. She went to the correspondence first. The top letters were innocuous supply queries, a note from a railroad agent. She lifted them carefully, read quickly. Under the third letter was a folded document that made her stop breathing. It was a ledger page. Printed columns, handwritten entries. Names down the left side, dollar amounts in the middle, property descriptions on the right. The names were from Billings. She recognized 3 of them, neighbors of her father, a dry goods merchant, a woman who had run a small school of her own. All of them people Farrell had targeted. All of them listed with amounts, not debts, but payments. Payments made to a second party, listed only as MC, the Meridian Consortium. Pete had used that term, Land Consortium. Meridian. MC. This was the payment record. Proof that the debt notices were a mechanism that money extracted from the targets was being funneled directly to a consortium account. Her hands were steady. She had been more frightened in smaller moments. She memorized what she could. The columns. The format. The 3 property descriptions at the bottom of the page that she did not recognize, but that included a notation beside each: Red Willow MT. Water corridor. Priority acquisition. Cole's Ranch was listed second. The notation beside it read, Phase 2. Notice issued. Target unresponsive. Escalate at day 30. She replaced the letters exactly as she had found them. She did not take anything. Taking anything meant he would know. She moved to the leather case. It was latched, not locked. She had 30 seconds of consideration and then opened it. Inside, a map. Hand-drawn, detailed, showing the entire water corridor from mountain to valley floor with the property lines of every ranch it passed through. Cole's was circled twice in red ink. Beside it in Farrell's hard slanting handwriting, and writing Barrett. Title uncertain, pursue defect claim. Concurrent with debt default. Title uncertain. How is going to attack the deed itself. Not just the debt, the ownership. Make the title look questionable, force Cole into a legal fight on two fronts. Simultaneously drain the money and the time until the only option was to sell. The clock on the mantel read 1:47. She closed the case exactly as she'd found it, went to the door, listened, heard nothing. She let herself out into the hallway, walked to her own room at the end of the hall, sat on the edge of the bed and breathed. She had the information now. She had what was in that room without taking a single piece of it, which meant he didn't know, which meant the window was still open. But she also had something else now, the knowledge that 30 days was not the timeline. Day 30. Escalate at day 30. The notice had arrived 11 days ago. They had 19 days. She found Cole at the ranch that afternoon and told him everything. Not edited, not softened. The full account of what she had done and what she had seen. When she finished, Cole was very quiet. "You went in there alone," he said. "Yes." "Without telling me?" "Yes." She held his gaze. "If I had told you, you would have argued with me, and I wasn't wrong that it was the right thing to do." Cole looked at her for a long moment. Something moved across his face that she couldn't entirely read. Not anger, not exactly, but something with heat in it. He stood up from the fence rail and walked 3 steps away, and then stopped and stood with his back to her. "You could have been caught," he said. "I wasn't." "That's not the same as it being safe, Cole," she said it firmly. "I am not someone who needs your permission to take a risk on my own behalf, or on behalf of someone I—" She stopped, adjusted. "Or on behalf of what's right." He turned back to face her. The heat in his expression had shifted into something harder to name. He looked at her the way a person looks at something they are simultaneously grateful for and frustrated by and don't know what to do with. "What did you almost say?" he said. "It doesn't matter right now, Addie." "It doesn't matter right now," she said again, with a specificity that was itself an answer. "What matters is this: we have 19 days. He's planning 2 concurrent attacks, debt default, and a title defect claim. We need to neutralize both, and we need to do it in a way that exposes the consortium, not just Farrell. Because if we only expose Farrell, the consortium sends someone else." Cole held her gaze for a long moment. Then he moved back to the fence, stood beside her, not quite close enough to be deliberate, but not far enough to be accidental, and looked at the north field. "Pete's letter to Billings," he said. "The bank closure. If we have that confirmation, the debt notice is provably impossible to enforce." "That's the first front," she said. "But the title claim is harder. He'll file it with the county clerk, and we'll have to respond formally." "Unless we have the map," Cole said. "The one he showed you, property lines, corridor, his handwriting beside every target. If that map is entered as evidence, it doesn't just prove the title claim is fraudulent. It proves premeditation. We'd need a judge to accept it. There's a circuit judge coming through Red Willow in—" He looked at the sky, calculating 22 days. 1 day after Farrell's escalation deadline. "We don't get the judge," Addie said. "No, but if we can delay him taking any action until the judge arrives—" "The town meeting," she said. "Mayor Aldous holds a monthly town meeting. It's in 18 days. If we bring evidence to a public forum before Farrell can file with the clerk—" "He files in the county seat, not here," Cole said. "Which means he has to send someone or go himself. If we can figure out when he plans to file and get ahead of it—" They were thinking out loud together, building it in real time, the way 2 people build a thing when they have both been looking at the same problem from different angles long enough that the shape of the solution starts to become visible between them. Pete appeared from the direction of the barn. "I've been listening," he said without apology. "Don't be annoyed. I'm old, and I've earned the right to be useful." He sat on a fence post. "There's something I know about the land title on this property that I haven't told either of you because I didn't know it mattered." Cole turned. "Tell me now. When your uncle bought this land," Pete said, "there was a water rights agreement attached to the deed, a formal document registered with the territorial government in Helena. It guaranteed access to the creek corridor for all downstream properties indefinitely as a condition of the original land grant. He paused. Which means the water rights aren't actually transferable. They're bound to the original grant conditions. Even if Farrell managed to take the land, he couldn't legally restrict the downstream access. The barn was quiet. He doesn't know that, Addie said. He couldn't know that, Pete said. That document isn't at the county clerk's office. It's in Helena in the territorial records. It's not the kind of thing a land speculator would check for. Cole stared at Pete. You've known this for 11 years and never mentioned it. Why would I mention it? Nobody was trying to steal the creek. Pete looked faintly dignified. I know it because I was here when your uncle filed the renewal. I helped him write the letter. Addie made a sound not quite a laugh, but close to it. The tension in the barn shifted by some measurable degree. So the water rights are inviolable, Cole said. Even if Farrell takes the land. He gets a ranch and no control over the creek, Pete said. The whole scheme falls apart. Then we need that document, Addie said. From Helena, original filing. I can write to the territorial office today, Pete said. Do it. Cole and Addie said at almost exactly the same moment, and then looked at each other, and the almost laugh that had been near the surface came up a little further. Cole held her gaze for just a beat longer than the conversation required. Then he looked away, and Pete was already walking back to the barn, with the particular gait of a man who had just been helpful and knew it. That evening, Vera Hutchins came to the boarding house again. Addie watched from the window of her room. This time, Vera did not go inside. She stood on the porch for several minutes in conversation with Farrell, who stood in the doorway, looking out at the street, with the patient, unhurried manner of a man who believes he has more time than he needs. Then Farrell said something, and Vera nodded and left. Farrell stayed in the doorway. He looked out at the street. His gaze moved slowly from one end to the other, the way a man looks at something he intends to own. Then he looked up. Not at Addie's window exactly, but near it. Near enough that she stepped back from the glass and held herself still against the wall. She waited. She heard his door close. She let out a slow breath and stood in the quiet of the room for a long moment. He hadn't seen her. She was almost certain. But the way he had looked at the street calm proprietorial, entirely without doubt, told her something she needed to hold on to in the next 19 days. Douglas Farrell had done this before, many times. He had done it to her father, to her neighbors, to people who had no warning and no one helping them. He was good at it. He was careful and patient, and he had a system that worked. What he had never had in any of the towns he'd moved through was someone who recognized him. Addie Monroe pressed her back against the wall of a room in Red Willow, Montana, and thought, this time is different. She thought about a man on a fence who had said, I don't want you here because you feel sorry for me. I want you here because you choose me, and who hadn't even said those words yet because that was still to come. She thought about what it would take to keep Cole Barrett's land on the right side of this. She thought about 19 days. Then she sat down at the small table in her room and began writing out every detail she had memorized from Farrell's room. Every name from the ledger page, every property description, every figure in those columns, while the memory was still clean and sharp and exactly as it had been. She wrote until the candle burned low. When she finished, she folded the pages, tucked them inside the lining of her coat, where they would stay dry and hidden, and went to sleep. She did not sleep well, but she slept. Tomorrow, there would be more to do. There was always more to do. And Douglas Farrell, standing on that porch, looking at the street like he owned everything in sight, had no idea that the woman in the room above him had already begun to dismantle everything he had built. The letter from Billings came back in 9 days instead of 10. Pete brought it to the ranch at mid-morning, handed it to Cole without a word, and stood back. Cole read it standing in the paddock with the gray gelding nuzzling at his elbow, and when he finished reading, he handed it to Pete and said nothing for a long moment. The First Territorial Bank of Billings had closed its doors in November of 1881. Not 1882. 1881, 5 months before the date on the loan agreement in Cole's debt notice. The bank's charter had been dissolved by the territorial government after a fraud investigation. All outstanding accounts had been transferred to a federal receiver. No new loans had been issued after October of 1881. The debt notice was not just fraudulent, it was sloppy. Farrell had used a bank that had been dead for 4.5 years and hadn't bothered to check the closure date closely enough. "He's been running this scheme so long he got comfortable," Pete said. "Or he didn't expect anyone to check," Cole said. "Same thing eventually." Cole folded the letter carefully and put it in his shirt pocket beside the debt notice. 2 documents. One that fabricated a debt. One that proved the fabrication was impossible. He thought about Addie's notes from Farrell's room folded inside her coat lining. He thought about Pete's letter to Helena requesting the original water rights filing. They were building something. Piece by piece, quietly, while Farrell stood on boarding house porches and had evening conversations with Vera Hutchins and looked at the street like it already belonged to him. 8 days left. He rode into town to find Addie and tell her about the letter, but he found something else first. He found Addie talking to Farrell. They were standing on the side street beside the boarding house, not on the main road, which was what made Cole slow his horse instead of riding past. The side street was not visible from the main road unless you came from the east at a specific angle, which Cole had because he'd taken the long route. Addie's back was to the building. Farrell faced her. Cole pulled the horse up short behind the corner of the dry goods store and watched. He couldn't hear the words. He could read the shapes of the conversation, the posture of it, the way bodies arrange themselves when the air between 2 people is not friendly. Farrell was talking. Addie was listening with her arms loose at her sides, not crossed, not tense in that particular stillness Cole had come to recognize as her combat posture. Farrell said something and gestured toward the north, toward the direction of Cole's ranch. Addie said something back. Short. Farrell's chin came up. Then Farrell did something that put ice in Cole's chest. He reached into his coat and produced a folded document and held it out to her. Not threatening offering. The way a man offers something he knows the other person can't refuse. Addie looked at it. She did not take it. Farrell said something else. Longer this time. He put the document back in his coat when she didn't take it, and he smiled the kind of smile Cole had seen on certain men's faces that was entirely about power and nothing about warmth. Then he touched the brim of his hat, turned, and walked back to the boarding house entrance without hurrying. Addie stood in the side street for a moment. Then she turned and walked the other direction toward the post office. Cole sat on his horse around the corner of the dry goods store and felt something cold and ugly spreading through his chest. I thought about the things he knew and the things he didn't know. He knew Addie had recognized Farrell. He knew she had been in Farrell's room. He knew she had been here 3 weeks before Farrell arrived, or at least she said she had. He thought about May's timeline. He thought about how Addie had known exactly where Farrell went in the afternoons, how she had known his handwriting, how she had walked him step by careful step through everything she had discovered, with a precision that was either genuine knowledge or very good preparation. He thought about the document Farrell had offered her. He sat there for 2 full minutes doing something he rarely did, which was letting the worst possible explanation for something take up space in his mind. Then he rode to the post office. Addie was at the counter when he came in. She turned when she heard the door, and the moment she saw his face, she went very still. "Come outside," he said. She came. They stood on the post office steps, and Cole looked at her with the kind of expression that doesn't require explanation. She could see exactly what he had seen. "You watched," she said. "I came in from the east. I didn't plan to." "All right." She held his gaze. "Ask me." "What did he want?" "He knows who I am," she said. "He recognized me. I don't know when, maybe yesterday, maybe before. He stopped me on the side street and told me he remembered me from Billings. He said," she took a breath. "He said he knew I had been talking to you about him. He said if I stopped, if I went quiet and let this proceed, he would make sure my name stayed out of it. That whatever debt my father had supposedly owed to his affiliated accounts would be marked settled." Cole was very still. "What did he offer you in that document?" "A letter releasing my father's debt claim." Her voice was even. The false one he used to destroy him. He was offering to undestroy it on paper if I stepped away. And I didn't take it. The evenness in her voice had an edge now, not anger at Cole, but anger at having to stand here and explain this. I told him nothing. He filed against my father was real, so he had nothing to release, and I walked away. Cole looked at her. She looked back. You were going to tell me this, he said. I was on my way to you when you came in the door. She held out a folded piece of paper. Cole took it. It was a note in Addie's handwriting, a few lines with Cole's name at the top. I wrote it before I went to the post office. I was going to leave it with May in case you came to the ranch while I wasn't there. Cole opened it. It said, Farrell knows. He tried to buy my silence. I didn't take it. Come find me, there's more. A. He read it once. Read it again. The cold, ugly thing in his chest didn't disappear entirely, but it shifted, became something he recognized as shame rather than suspicion. He had stood around a corner watching a woman who had never given him a reason to doubt her and let the worst of himself do the thinking. I owe you an apology, he said. You owe me an explanation, she said, not unkindly but precisely. What did you think you were seeing? He told her, plainly without dressing it up. He told her what the picture had looked like from the east corner of the dry goods store and what his mind had done with it, and that he was not proud of either. She listened without interrupting. When he finished, she was quiet for a moment. I know what that looked like, she said. I know the shape of it. A woman with a history in the same city as the man causing the problem meeting that man in a back street. She paused. I should have told you the moment he stopped me. I was coming to tell you. Another pause. I needed 5 minutes to think first. I needed to be sure I'd handled it right before I handed it to someone else. You don't have to handle things alone, Cole said. I know. She said it quietly. I'm still learning that. They stood on the post office steps in the morning light, and the town moved around them, and neither of them said anything for a moment. You said there was more, Cole said. He told me something when I said I wouldn't take the letter. She looked at the street. He said, You can't stop what's already in motion. The filing is done. He said it like he was certain, like it was meant to land. Cole's jaw tightened. He filed already. Or he wants me to think he did, to panic us into making a mistake. She looked at Cole directly. But we need to assume he's telling the truth. We need to move as if the filing is already at the county clerk. Cole calculated. If Farrell had already filed, the title defect claim would begin generating a legal response timeline. County clerks sent notices. Cole would receive one within a week, but the circuit judge wasn't due for another 14 days. We can't wait for the judge, Addie said, following the same logic. No. Cole put the note in his pocket. Pete's letter to Helena, how long? He sent it 6 days ago. Territorial records are slow. Too slow. Cole looked at the street, at the buildings of Red Willow, going about their ordinary morning. He thought about 4 downstream ranches that didn't know their water was being targeted. He thought about Mayor Aldous and the town meeting. We move it up. The town meeting. We go to Aldous today. Tell him we need a special assembly. Emergency basis land fraud affecting multiple properties. He looked at her. If Farrell's filed, we can't fight it quietly anymore. We have to fight it in the open. Addie was quiet for exactly 3 seconds, which Cole had learned was how long she took when she was checking something in herself. All right, she said. But Cole, if we go public, he goes public too. He'll use everything he has, including my history and billings, including the fact that I went into his room. You didn't take anything. He doesn't know that for certain. He'll imply I did. He'll make the story about me. Let him, Cole said. Because when we put his ledger page in front of the town, we don't have his ledger page. I saw it. I didn't take it. But you wrote down what it said, Cole said. Every name, every figure, every property description. She looked at him. You wrote it from memory, and you tucked it somewhere safe, he said. Because that's what you do. You're careful, and you're thorough, and you think 3 steps ahead. After a moment, it's in my coat lining. Then we have his ledger, Cole said. Handwritten from a primary witness who was present in the room. That's not nothing. That's testimony. Something shifted in her expression. Not relief exactly, but the particular loosening that happens when a person realizes the thing they've been carrying alone is lighter with two people under it. "We go to Aldous this morning," she said. "This morning," Cole agreed. Aldous was a large, deliberate man who had been running Red Willow for 7 years with the philosophy that the best governance was the kind people didn't notice. He did not like surprises. He liked order schedules and the reliable turning of ordinary commerce. Cole and Addie sat across from him in his back office for 40 minutes and watched his expression travel from mild impatience through careful attention to the particular tight-jawed stillness of a man who has just understood that something he didn't want to be true is true. Cole laid out the debt notice, the letter from Billings confirming the bank's closure, and Addie's written account of what she had seen in Farrell's room. Addie laid out the ledger names, Billings' victims, and the property descriptions with the Red Willow notations. Pete's map of the water corridor. The timeline of Farrell's scouting visit 2 months prior. Aldous read everything twice. He asked 4 questions, each precise. Cole answered 3. Addie answered the 4th. When Aldous was done, he sat back and laced his hands and looked at the ceiling. "If this filing has gone to the county clerk," he said, "we have a problem that goes beyond your ranch, Barrett. A title defect claim. Even a fraudulent one can cloud the water rights agreement for all downstream properties while it's in dispute. That could take months to resolve. In a dry year, that's financially ruinous for 4 operations." "I know," Cole said. "And you're telling me this man has been operating this scheme across multiple territories?" "At least 8 documented targets in Billings alone," Addie said. "Likely more that didn't make any record because the targets simply paid and moved on." Aldous was quiet. Then, "I'll call the assembly for Friday. 4 days. That gives me time to speak privately to the affected downstream ranchers and to send a telegraph to the county clerk requesting confirmation of any recent filings against your deed." "He'll know you telegraphed," Cole said. "Yes, he will." Aldous looked at Cole steadily. "That's not entirely unwelcome. Let him know the town is paying attention. Cornered men make mistakes." Cole thought about what Addie had said on the post office steps. "He'll make the story about me." He looked at Aldous. "There's one more thing," he said. "When this goes public, Farrell is going to attempt to discredit the primary witness." He looked at Addie. She met his eyes without looking away. "He'll use her history and Billings, her father's bankruptcy, the fact that she knew Farrell before she came here. He'll claim she's running a counter-scheme." Aldous looked at Addie. "Are you prepared for that?" "Yes," she said. "What's your response when he makes the claim?" "The truth," she said. "My father lost everything to Douglas Farrell's forged debt notice. I came to Red Willow to start over and found him here under a different name. I had 2 choices, stay quiet or do something about it." She held Aldous' gaze. "I chose something about it." Aldous studied her for a moment. Then he nodded once slowly, in the manner of a man filing a judgment. "Friday," he said. "My office will send word to every property holder with land in the water corridor." 4 days was not a long time. And it was also an enormous amount of time when the thing you were waiting for was the moment a man like Douglas Farrell realized the walls were closing in. Cole felt it the first day, in the way the town changed texture subtly, the way weather changes before it breaks. May told him Farrell had been asking questions at the feed store about the circuit court schedule, which meant he was worried about the judge's arrival. Hobb reported a rider had come to the property line again. Different man, this time younger, who left quickly when Hobb appeared, and Vera Hutchins stopped coming to the boarding house. Addie noticed it first. She told Cole on the second day, "She hasn't been back since Tuesday morning. Whatever he told her, she's keeping distance now." "Scared?" Cole said. "Or calculating," Addie said. "She's not a bad person, Vera. She's a foolish one. She got in over her head and now she knows it." "Does that matter?" Addie thought about this. "It might," she said. "If she's frightened, she might talk. To the right person at the right moment." Cole filed that away. On the third day, Pete received the response from Helena. It arrived mid-afternoon, and Pete read it standing in the barn, with his lips moving slightly, a habit he had when he was reading something that mattered. And then he looked up with an expression Cole had not seen on his face before. It took Cole a moment to identify it. It was relief. "The water rights filing," Pete said. "The Territorial Records Office confirmed it. The original land grant condition registered in Helena, 1863. Renewed by your uncle in 1879. He handed Cole the letter. They included a certified copy of the filing number and the registered terms, binding on all successors, inviolable by private debt proceeding. Cole held the letter, in his hands confirmation that the one thing Farrell's entire scheme depended on, control of the water, could not legally be achieved regardless of what happened to the land title. Even if Farrell somehow won the deed claim, even if the debt notice pressure succeeded, the water would remain public access corridor. The whole architecture of the scheme was built on a foundation that didn't exist. "He doesn't know," Cole said. "He didn't check," Pete said. "Or he checked at the county level, and it wasn't there to find." Pete sat on a hay bale with the relief still on his face. "Cole, even if we lost every other fight, if the filing went through, if the judge ruled against us, if every piece of evidence we have fell apart, he still couldn't close that creek." Cole stood very still. "I thought about a man who had done this to 8 families in Billings, who had taken his livelihoods, futures, who had done it to a school teacher who died broken in March and left his daughter to pick up the pieces and start over 300 miles away, and who had arrived in Red Willow to do the same thing to a valley full of people who had no idea he was here. He built an entire scheme on a water right he couldn't legally take," Cole said. "He built it on people not knowing what they were owed," Pete said. Cole handed the letter back to Pete and went to find Addie. She was at the paddock with the gray gelding, who was moving cleanly now on both sides, the hip compensation entirely gone. She turned when Cole came through the gate and read his face and said, "Good news." "Helena confirmed it," he said. "The water rights are protected. He can't take them regardless of what he does to the deed." She went still. Then something happened in her expression that Cole had not seen before. Not relief, not triumph, but a specific contained grief. The kind that comes when you find out that something could have been prevented, was always preventable, and someone should have known it sooner. "If someone had told my father," she said, "in Billings, if someone had looked at the original filing, whatever he held, whatever it was, Addie, I know," she said. "I know that's not now." She pressed her hand flat against the gelding's neck, steadying herself through the contact. "It's just for a moment I needed to feel how much it costs when people don't know what they're owed." Cole stood at the paddock gate and let her have that moment. He didn't rush it or deflect it or offer her something positive to override it. He had learned in these few weeks that the quickest way to disrespect someone's grief was to try to fix it. She breathed. The gelding stood easy. Then she looked at Cole. "Tell me what we do with this tomorrow." "Aldous," Cole said. "Tonight, before the assembly. He needs to know about the Helena confirmation. It changes the entire shape of what we present tomorrow. It's not just that Farrell committed fraud. It's that the fraud was built on a legal impossibility. The scheme was never going to deliver what it promised. Which means," Addie said slowly, "someone hired him knowing that. Or he took the money from the consortium on false pretenses." Cole looked at her. "The consortium funded this scheme based on Farrell's claim that he could acquire the water rights," she said. "If the water rights were legally protected all along, then either Farrell knew and lied to his backers, or he didn't know and he's incompetent." She paused. "Either way, the consortium has been defrauded by their own man." "That's leverage," Cole said. "That's more than leverage," she said. "That's the reason he panics when the walls close in. Because it's not just the law coming for him. If we expose him, his backers find out he's failed them and lied to them in the same motion." Her voice was quiet and very even. "Men like Farrell are only safe as long as they're successful." Cole had a new understanding then of what kind of danger they were actually standing near. Not just the legal kind. "Then we move carefully," he said. "And we move tomorrow." "Yes," she said. The gelding shifted and Addie's hand moved with him, automatic and steady. "Cole," she said, not looking at him. "Whatever happens tomorrow, I need you to know that I didn't come here for this. I didn't come here to fight this battle. I came here because I was tired and I needed somewhere to land." She paused. "I just happened to land somewhere that needed fighting." "I know that," he said, "and I need you to know." She stopped. The gelding's ear flicked. She pressed her lips together and then said it anyway. "I need you to know that whatever I've done in these weeks, I didn't do it for the ranch. I did it because this valley and these people, and a beat. Because some things deserve to be protected." Cole understood what she didn't complete. He understood it with the specific clarity of a man who has spent years avoiding exactly this kind of understanding. He opened the paddock gate and walked in and stood beside her at the gelding's shoulder, close enough that their arms nearly touched. "I know what you didn't say," he said. She looked at him. "I'm glad you're here," he said. "Not for the creek, not for the legal fight." He held her gaze. "For you being here. I'm glad." She looked at him for a long moment, not shyly, not with performance. The way she looked at things, she was deciding to trust. "All right," she said softly. Not more than that. It was enough. That night, Farrell made his move. Cole was at Aldis's office when May Lindell came to the door, which meant she had walked through town in the dark, specifically to deliver something she could not put in a note. "He's packing," she said. "I heard him through the wall an hour ago. Drawers, his leather case, the wooden box. Methodical. He's not leaving tonight, it's too late for the road, but he'll be gone by morning." Cole looked at Aldis. Aldis looked at Cole. "If he leaves before the assembly," Aldis began. "He takes the evidence with him," Cole finished. "The ledger, the map, the documents in that wooden box. Everything he doesn't want found." "Can we stop him legally?" Addie said. She had come with Cole to Aldis's office when Cole had insisted, and she had been right to come. "Not without a sworn complaint already on record," Aldis said. "We'd need the county sheriff and a writ, and we don't have time." "The map," Cole said. He turned to Addie. "You said it was in the leather case, unlatched." "Cole, he's packing tonight. He'll have that case with him when he rides. But if the map isn't in it..." "We cannot take things from a man's room," Aldis said carefully. "No," Cole agreed. "But if a woman left something of her own in that room, something she needed to retrieve tonight, and happened to notice a document that corroborated her written testimony..." "Cole." Addie's voice was sharp and low. He looked at her. She was looking at him with an expression he hadn't seen before, not anger exactly, but something fierce and protective. "I went in once," she said. "And you spent 20 minutes on the corner doubting me for it. I'm not going back in there and you're not going to ask me to." The room was quiet. Cole opened his mouth, closed it. She was right. She was completely right. And the fact that he had been about to ask it, had built a logical argument for why it was necessary, made him feel the weight of what he'd almost done. "You're right," he said. "I'm sorry." She held his gaze for a moment longer, not punishing him, just making sure he understood. Then she turned to Aldis. "Is there another way?" Aldis had been watching this exchange with the contained expression of a man who is filing things away. He said, "There's one option. If we convince Vera Hutchins to make a formal statement tonight, what she was told, what she passed on, that's a sworn witness account. It won't stop him leaving, but it means what leaves with him is already on record somewhere else." Cole and Addie looked at each other. "She's frightened," Cole said. "She's more frightened of being on the wrong side of this than she is of him," Addie said. "She kept away from him this week. She already knows it's going wrong." "You think she'll talk?" Cole said. "I think," Addie said slowly, "that the right person asking the right way has a reasonable chance." She looked at Aldis. "Can you come with me as the mayor, as an official, not to pressure her, but so she knows this is real and she has somewhere to put it?" "Yes," Aldis said. He was already standing. Vera Hutchins opened her door at 9 o'clock in the evening to find the mayor of Red Willow and the woman from May Lindell's boarding house standing on her porch. She knew immediately. Cole saw it from across the street where he waited the way her body registered the arrival before she'd fully processed who had knocked. The smallest folding inward. He stayed where he was. He had agreed to wait. The conversation inside was Addie's to have. He stood on the dark street for 40 minutes. When Addie came out, she walked to him without hurrying. She stopped 2 feet away and looked up at him, and the expression on her face told him before the words did. She talked, Cole said. Everything, Addie said. What Farrell told her. What he paid her 3 months of grocery accounts settled anonymously. What he asked her to find out about the downstream ranchers. About you. She stopped. Cole. He asked her specifically about you. Your financial state, whether you had debts elsewhere, whether you were alone, whether there was anyone, family, a partner who might help you fight a legal claim. Cole was very still. He knew you were isolated, Addie said. He chose you specifically because you were alone. Something in Cole's chest did a thing he didn't expect. Not anger, not even pain exactly, but the recognition of something he had spent a long time not seeing about his own life. That the isolation he had built as protection had looked from the outside like vulnerability. That the walls he had constructed to keep loss out had also kept help out. That Douglas Farrell had looked at Cole Barrett's life and seen the loneliness as an opportunity. Aldous is taking her statement now, Addie said. She'll sign it tonight. That's the record, Cole said. That's what stays here when he goes. Yes. Addie looked at him steadily. And Cole, she said one more thing. She said he told her the assembly was irrelevant. That by the time any of us understood what was happening, the filing would be complete, and the claim would be established, and there would be nothing a small town meeting could do to undo it. He's that confident. He's been that confident every time, she said. And every time he was right. Because no one had everything assembled before he moved. This time someone did, Cole said. She held his gaze. This time someone did, she said. The dark street was quiet around them. Somewhere in the boarding house across town, a man with silver at his temples was packing a leather case in a wooden box and getting ready to disappear into the next place that didn't know him. I did not know that his name, his pattern, his ledger entries, his map, his payments to Vera Hutchins, and the impossible bank at the bottom of a fraudulent debt notice were all sitting in a signed statement in the mayor's office. He did not know that tomorrow, Red Willow was going to be waiting for him. Cole stood in the dark and understood with the sudden and absolute certainty of something that has been true for a while, finally becoming sayable, that he was not going to let this man take one more thing from one more person. Not this valley. Not these ranches. Not the woman standing 3 feet away who had walked into a den of old danger alone for a town that wasn't even hers yet because she had decided it was worth protecting. Go get some sleep, he said. You too, she said. Neither of them moved for a moment. Then Addie turned and walked toward the boarding house, and Cole turned and walked toward his horse, and Red Willow held its breath for what was coming in the morning. Part 3. Lưu ý viết 4 nen, 400 từ liên kết liền mạch với các phần trước trong câu chuyện pha hội thoại tạo thành một câu chuyện liền mạch khi ghép lại. Mỗi phần liền mạch với phần trước không giới thiệu lại câu chuyện ở đầu phần mới. Liên kết các phần của câu chuyện một cách liền mạch. Sử dụng câu chuyện tiếp giữa các phần. Duy trì chủ đề. Tránh ngắt quãng đột ngột, không sử dụng gạch đầu dòng hoặc tiêu đề phụ phong cách kể chuyện Mỹ Hoa Kỳ, giống văn giàu cảm xúc chân thực và gần gũi. Không mô tả cảnh, tập trung vào hành động, cảm xúc và tâm lý nhân vật. Viết phần này đạt điểm 10/10 và bổ sung tiết tấu câu chuyện nhanh, sửa lời AI, kể theo ngôi thứ 3, tăng độ kịch tính, không viết lần màn kết thúc phần, không giới thiệu phần sau. Lưu ý trả lời trong mục tin nhắn, không nhảy sang mục document mỗi 2-3 phút, cần có mini climax và đạt 10-15 mini climax mỗi phần cử. 10-12 phút có một twist lớn sâu sắc, đan xen mini cliffhanger mạnh hơn. Thăng tính tự nhiên cho phản ứng của các nhân vật, thêm nhịp điệu, kịch tính thực tế và gần gũi. Mỗi 8-10 phút cần có móc giữ chân khán giả. Lưu ý không mô tả cảnh và chỉ cần viết nội dung và viết đúng lệnh cho tôi. Mỗi part liền mạch với part trước, không giới thiệu lại câu chuyện ở đầu part mới. Dùng câu chuyện tiếp tự nhiên. Không kết thúc part bằng cách giới thiệu part sau. Pha đối thoại đều và tự nhiên xuyên suốt để tạo nhịp kịch tính. Nhớ lại những nhận xét các lần làm kịch bản trước, để lần này làm giữ chân được người nghe lâu hơn, tránh mô tả quá rườm rà lan man. Nhớ giới hạn về từ. Show more. Tôi thấy bạn đang yêu cầu viết lại part 3 phần trước. Tôi đã viết part 3 rồi, nhưng bạn muốn version mới tốt hơn. Tôi sẽ viết lại hoàn toàn với nhịp nhanh hơn, kịch tính hơn, và đúng cấu trúc twist lớn ở phút 12 và phút 22 hay 25. Farrell was still there when morning came. Cole had half expected to find an empty room and a cold trail. Instead, May told him at first light that Farrell had come down for breakfast at his usual hour, eaten without haste, and gone back upstairs. The leather case was still in his room. The wooden box was still on the dresser. He wasn't running. Cole stood in May's kitchen and understood what that meant. A man who was running packed at night and rode before dawn. A man who stayed for breakfast was a man who had decided there was nothing to run from, or a man who had changed his plan entirely. He knows about the assembly, Cole said. May nodded. Someone told him. I don't know who, but he came down to breakfast calm as anything and asked me what time the town hall opened on Fridays. Cole was out the door before she finished the sentence. He found Addie at the paddock fence, already there, already waiting, which told him she had been thinking the same thing since before sunrise. She turned when she heard him coming, and the first thing she said was, "He's not leaving." I know. He's going to come to the assembly himself. I know that too. Cole stopped at the fence. He's going to walk in and present himself as the wronged party. He'll have his own documents, whatever he's carrying in that wooden box. He'll have the filing confirmation if he's already sent it to the county clerk. He'll control the room before Aldous even calls it to order. Unless we're already there, Addie said. We need to be there an hour early, Cole said. We need Aldous with Vera's statement in hand before Farrell walks in the door. We need Pete with the Helena confirmation. We need the bank letter. And my notes, Addie said, from his room. Every piece on the table before he sits down. She was already untying her horse from the rail. Then we go now. We have 4 hours. The town hall was a plain room with 12 long benches and a raised platform at the front where Aldous presided over monthly meetings. By the time Cole and Addie arrived, Pete was already there, sitting in the front row with a leather satchel across his knees, looking like a man who had prepared for a test and was confident about it. Hob was there too, which Cole hadn't asked for but wasn't surprised by. Figured you might need bodies, Hob said simply. May Lindell arrived 15 minutes later with the particular expression of a woman who has decided to be done being neutral. She sat beside Pete without being asked and set her hands in her lap and looked at the door. Aldous came in at 8:30 and spent 30 minutes reviewing every document, the debt notice, the bank letter, the Helena confirmation, Vera's signed statement, Addie's handwritten reconstruction of the ledger page. He read each one the way he had read them the night before, carefully, completely, without commentary, until he was finished. When he set the last page down, he looked at Cole. The county clerk's office responded to my telegraph this morning, he said. Farrell filed a title defect claim on the Barrett property 4 days ago. The room was quiet. 4 days ago, Cole said. The same day he told Addie the filing was done. He was telling the truth for once, Pete said. It doesn't change what we have, Addie said. Her voice was steady. A filed claim can be contested. It can be dismissed if the basis is fraudulent. The Helena confirmation goes directly to the heart of the defect argument. If the water rights are protected under the original land grant, the entire basis for the claim evaporates. The circuit judge, Aldous said. He arrives in 10 days. If we present everything at this assembly as a public record. Vera's statement, the bank evidence, the Helena filing, it creates a documented community record that the judge receives the moment he steps off the stage. Farrell knows about the judge, Addie said. He'll try to discredit everything before the judge sees it. That's what today is for, Aldous said. At 9 o'clock exactly, the benches began to fill. The 4 downstream ranchers arrived first. Caleb Marsh, who ran 200 head of cattle and depended on the creek's lower reach for his summer grazing. The Dunnigan brothers, who farmed the valley floor and had water rights agreements with Cole's property going back 15 years. And old Warren Fitch, 71 years old, who had been in this valley before Red Willow had a name, and whose hands shook now, but whose eyes were sharp as ever. Cole greeted each of them and told them plainly, not everything, not yet, but enough. Someone had filed a fraudulent claim against his property. The water corridor was the real target, and they needed to hear what had been discovered. Each man listened. Each man sat down. By 9:30, the benches were 2/3 full. Word had moved through Red Willow the way it always moved in small towns, fast and transformed slightly in the moving. People came because they were curious, or because they were worried, or because they had heard something that scared them. A woman Cole recognized as the dry goods clerk's wife came in and sat in the middle of the room and looked straight ahead. Vera Hutchins did not come. Cole had not expected her to. She had given her statement, and she would live with the consequences of what she'd done in private, and that was likely as much courage as she could summon. He didn't judge her for it. At 9:45, Farrell walked in. He came alone. He was dressed well, the kind of dressed well that is a statement that says, "I am a man of business and credibility, and I belong in rooms where decisions are made." He carried the leather case. He looked around the room with the patient, measuring attention Cole had seen on his face outside the boarding house, and then he found Cole, and held his gaze for a moment, and nodded as if they were professional acquaintances, meeting at a scheduled negotiation. Cole did not nod back. Farrell chose a seat near the aisle 3 rows back, where he could see the platform and the room simultaneously. He set the leather case across his knees and folded his hands on top of it, and waited. Cole watched him settle and thought he believes he's the most prepared man in this room. He was about to find out how wrong that was. Aldous called the assembly to order at 10 o'clock. I was deliberate about it, not rushed, not nervous, with the authority of a man who has held this room for 7 years and knows exactly how it listens. He stated the purpose plainly. A matter of property fraud had come to his attention, affecting directly one property in the valley, and indirectly 4 others through water access rights. He had called this assembly to present evidence and establish a public record before the circuit judge's arrival. The room sharpened immediately. Cole heard the shift, the change in breathing, the small movements of people sitting forward. Farrell's expression did not change. Aldous invited Cole to speak first. Cole stood. He had thought about how to do this, whether to be formal or plain, whether to present the documents first or the story. He chose plain. He stood in front of the room and spoke the way he worked, directly, without performance, giving each fact its proper weight and moving to the next. He told them about the debt notice, about the bank that had been dead for 5 years before the notice claimed a loan was issued. He held up the letter from Billings confirming the closure date. He held up the notice beside it. He let the room see both. He heard Warren Fitch mutter something from the back bench. Then Pete stood and presented the Helena confirmation. The water rights filing, the original land grant conditions, the certified copy of the registered terms. He read the key clause aloud in his slow, deliberate voice. Water access for all downstream properties guaranteed in perpetuity as a condition of territorial land grant, inviolable by private debt proceeding or title transfer. Caleb Marsh said audibly, "He can't take the creek even if he takes the land." "He cannot," Pete confirmed and sat back down. Then Addie stood. The room's attention moved to her with a different quality. Curious, some of it wary, the way rooms respond to someone they don't fully know yet. She was aware of it. Cole watched her absorb it without flinching and set it aside the way she set aside a frightened horse's initial resistance. She told them who Douglas Farrell was. Not Farlow. Farrell. She said both names clearly. Let the room hear the similarity. Let them work out the distance between the two. She told them about Billings' 8 families, the pattern, her father's school contract. She told them what she had seen in his room, the ledger page, the property descriptions marked Red Willow MT, Water Corridor, Priority Acquisition. She read from her notes in a steady voice, each entry, each name from Billings, each dollar figure. The room was completely silent. Then she told them about the Meridian Consortium Chicago Money, a network of operations buying Western water rights through local proxies, Farrell as the operator. She told them that the water rights on Cole's property had been legally protected since 1863, that the entire scheme had been built on a foundation that couldn't legally deliver what it promised, which meant either Farrell had lied to his own backers or hadn't done basic research. Either way, she said, this valley was chosen as a target by a man who believed we were isolated enough that no one would look closely. He believed we wouldn't know what we were owed. She paused. We know what we're owed, she said. In the third row, Farrell's hands tightened on the leather case. It was a small movement. Cole saw it. Aldous then presented Vera's signed statement. He read it aloud, Vera's account of what Farrell had told her, what he had asked her to find out the grocery account payment. He read her name clearly. The room heard it. The dry goods clerk's wife made a sharp sound. Then Aldous looked at Farrell. Mr. Farlow, he said with a particular inflection on the false name. You are welcome to address this assembly. Farrell stood. How was good? Cole would give him that. He stood with composure, and he looked around the room with the expression of a man who has been surprised by an ambush, but has been in enough of them to keep his footing. He opened the leather case and produced his own documents. The filed title defect claim correspondence on formal letterhead, a letter of introduction from a Billings Business Association. I understand there are concerns, he said. His voice was calibrated, not defensive, not aggressive, the voice of a reasonable man dealing with an unfortunate misunderstanding. I want to address them directly. My name is Douglas Farlow. I am a land acquisition representative operating lawfully in this territory. The debt claim against the Barrett property is based on a legitimate outstanding balance from a predecessor account. The bank closed in 1881, Pete said from the front row. Not loudly, just factually. Farrell paused. The loan predates the closure, he began. The bank issued no loans after October 1881, Pete said. The notice claims April 1882. That's 6 months after the bank's charter was dissolved. He held up the letter. I have this in writing from the Territorial Receiver's Office. Farrell looked at Pete, then at the room. He was calculating Cole could see it happening in real time the way a man runs through options when the ground shifts. He had prepared for resistance. He had prepared for skepticism. He had not prepared for this level of assembled documentation. The issue of the bank timing is... He stopped. Tried a different approach. The young woman's testimony regarding my room is inadmissible. She entered my private quarters without... She entered nothing, Cole said. He stood without being asked. She observed what was visible from the hallway through an open door. It wasn't true, but it was unprovable as false, and the room didn't need the details of what was true. What she saw corroborates what is already on record in Vera Hutchins's signed statement. Vera Hutchins is a member of this community for 14 years, Aldous said. His voice had taken on a quality Cole had not heard before, something with iron in it. Her statement is signed, witnessed, and entered into this assembly's record. You are welcome to dispute its accuracy. You are not welcome to dispute her standing. Farrell looked at Aldous. Something moved through his expression. The first real crack, not anger, but the particular cold recognition of a man who understands he has lost control of the room. He looked at Addie. It was the kind of look that was meant to communicate something, a warning, a reminder of what he knew about her, the offer he had made on the side street, and what it meant that she had refused it. Cole watched Addie receive that look and do nothing with it. She looked back at him with the same quality of stillness she used with everything difficult. She did not drop her eyes. She did not react. She simply let the look go unanswered until it had nowhere to land. Farrell looked away first. Warren Fitch stood up from the back bench. 71 years old, shaking hands, voice that still carried. I've been in this valley since before half you people were born, he said. I've seen men come through with papers and promises and legal language and walk off with other men's land before. I know what that looks like. He pointed a shaking finger at Farrell. That's what it looks like. Sit down. The room shifted. Caleb Marsh stood. Then the Dunnigan brothers both at once. Not to speak, just to stand. The particular statement of bodies in a room. Farrell stood at the front with his leather case and his formal letterhead and his calibrated voice, and looked around at a room that had made its decision and understood for possibly the first time in his professional life that he had misjudged something fundamental. He had believed Red Willow was isolated. It was not isolated. It was knit together in the way of places that have survived hard winters and hard years, and learned that the only reliable resource is the people beside you. He had arrived in a community and mistaken its quietness for weakness. He sat down. He didn't speak again. After Aldous formally closed the assembly and entered everything into the public record, there was the kind of controlled disorder that follows significant events in small rooms, people talking, moving the release of sustained attention. Cole stayed near the platform and watched Farrell pack his leather case, watched him walk toward the door. At the door, Farrell paused. He looked back, not at Cole, but at Addie, who was standing with May and hadn't moved. He held that look for a long moment. Then he walked out. Cole crossed to the door. "Cole," Addie said. He stopped. "He'll be gone by tonight," she said. "Let him go. He'll do this somewhere else. The judge gets everything in 10 days. Aldous is telegraphing the county clerk now to flag the filed claim as fraudulent. The Billings names from my notes, those families have a record now too, a circuit judge's record." She held his gaze. "He doesn't walk away clean. He walks away being followed." Cole stood at the door for a moment. Then he turned back into the room. Pete was talking to Caleb Marsh. Hob was explaining something to the Dunnigan brothers with his hands the way Hob always explained things. May was being thanked by Warren Fitch, who kept her hand in both of his and was saying something that made her eyes go bright. The creek on Cole's north field was still running. The land was still his. The water rights were confirmed in Helena and could not be touched by any legal mechanism Farrell had ever used or would use. And the woman who had walked into Red Willow 3 weeks after her father died with dust on her skirt and steady eyes and a capacity for stillness that looked like patience but was actually courage. She was standing 12 feet away, looking at Warren Fitch. Hold May's hands with an expression on her face that Cole recognized because he had felt it himself. The particular mix of exhaustion and relief, and something close to belonging, that comes when you have fought for a place, and the place has fought back with you. He crossed the room to her. She looked up when he arrived beside her. "It's not over," he said. "The judge, the county clerk, the Billings names." "No," she agreed. "Not over." "But today was right." "Today was right," she said. They stood in the room while Red Willow settled itself back into its ordinary shape around them, and neither of them said what they were both aware of, that the 10 days before the judge arrived were the first 10 days in 3 weeks that weren't about what Farrell might do next. They were just 10 days, and neither of them knew yet exactly what to do with that. Farrell was gone by 4 o'clock. May confirmed it. His key was on the kitchen table room, empty, no note. The wooden box was gone. The leather case was gone. Whatever documentation he had carried into Red Willow had left with him. But everything he hadn't known was documented: his name, his pattern, his consortium, his failed scheme, sitting in Aldous' office in a sealed record, addressed to the circuit judge. Cole was at the ranch when Pete came to tell him. He was at the gray gelding's paddock, watching the horse work a slow circle on the long line, moving correctly on both sides. Now the hip compensation entirely resolved. He listened to Pete and nodded and said nothing for a moment. "It's done," Pete said. The relief was still on his face from the morning, settled in, now permanent. "This part," Cole said. "This part," Pete agreed. He looked at the gelding. "Fine horse. Addie fixed him," Cole said. "Addie fixed a few things," Pete said with the absolute innocence of a man who has earned the right to say exactly what he means, and turned back toward the barn. Cole stood at the fence and watched the gelding move, and thought about a woman sitting on this same fence a few weeks ago, pressing her hands flat against her knees and telling him she knew how it felt when people didn't know what they were owed. I thought about what it had taken for her to come here and to stay and to stand in that room this morning and say, "We know what we're owed," to a room full of strangers who hadn't yet decided to trust her. He thought about Farrell choosing him specifically because he was alone. Because the loneliness was visible from the outside and looked like a weakness. He thought about 10 days before the judge arrived. He had spent 11 years on this ranch building walls between himself and wanting too much. He had been so careful about it that a man running a fraud scheme had identified the isolation from a road and used it as a targeting criterion. He was done being that kind of careful. He went inside and wrote Addie a note. Short. He didn't overthink it because overthinking was how he had spent 11 years, and he knew exactly where that road went. The note said, "When the judge is done, and the record is filed, and there's nothing left to fight." I'd like to talk about what comes after that, if you're willing. Cole. He rode to the boarding house and left it with May, who took it from him with no expression whatsoever, which was May's way of expressing everything. Then he rode home. The creek in the north field was running clear. The land was his. The evening was coming in amber and quiet over the mountain range, and for the first time in a long time, Cole Barrett rode toward his ranch house without the particular weight of a man who believes he is returning to nothing. He was returning to the beginning of something. He just had to wait 10 days to find out if it was what he thought it was, and deep down in the place where he had stopped letting himself be certain about anything he thought it was. Addie read Cole's note twice. She read it standing in May's kitchen with the folded paper in both hands, and May pretending to be very interested in the bread she was shaping on the counter. And after the second reading, Addie set the note down and looked at the wall for a moment, and then picked it up and read it a third time. When the judge is done, and the record is filed, and there's nothing left to fight. I'd like to talk about what comes after that, if you're willing. Cole. He asks permission, she said finally, to no one in particular. He always has, May said without looking up from the bread. Even when he was 19 and borrowed my uncle's fence posts and returned them sanded smooth. He asked permission then too. Addie folded the note and put it in her coat pocket, next to where her handwritten notes from Farrell's room had been before she'd handed them to Aldous that morning. I'll talk to him, she said. May said nothing. She had the particular silence of a woman who has already said everything she intends to. The 10 days before the circuit judge arrived were not peaceful exactly, but they had a different quality than the weeks before. The difference between weather that is building and weather that is holding. The filed claim against Cole's property sat at the county clerk's office, flagged as disputed, a legal instrument that required formal response but could not advance until the judge reviewed the evidence record Aldous had assembled. Farrell did not come back. There was no word from him, no communication, no counterfiling. Cole had half expected something. A lawyer's letter, a threatening message through a third party, some mechanism of a man who was not done fighting. What came instead was silence, and silence was its own kind of answer. A man who intended to continue operating did not advertise his whereabouts. The Meridian Consortium. Pete determined through another letter to a contact in Chicago had a registered address that corresponded to a law office specializing in Western land acquisition. The Billings names from Addie's notes were forwarded through Aldous through the circuit court clerk to the Territorial Attorney General's office in Helena. Whether that produced anything would take months to know. But the names were on record. The pattern was documented. The next town Farrell arrived in would have a history to find if anyone thought to look. None of this resolved anything immediately. But it had weight. And weight, Cole had learned, was how things eventually moved. In the meantime, the ranch kept its ordinary demands. Addie came on Tuesday and Thursday, as she always had, and now also on Saturdays, and the visits had shifted in character without either of them making a formal decision about it. She still worked with the horses, the gray gelding was fully recovered and ready for light work, and she had begun assessing the 2 young mares for the kind of training Cole had been hoping to do since the spring. But she also stayed for dinner sometimes, which she hadn't before, and those evenings had a quality that Cole didn't try to name because he had learned that naming things too early was how you made them fragile. Pete and Hob managed to be elsewhere during those dinners with a consistency that Cole recognized as coordinated and appreciated as tactful. They talked about horses and land and water and the practical machinery of the ranch. About billing. Now she was giving him pieces she hadn't given before. Not because she'd been withholding them, but because they were the kind of pieces you only share when you've decided the other person will handle them with care. Her father's teaching. The way his classroom had smelled like chalk and pine. How he had read to her on Friday evenings from whatever he was reading himself, without simplifying it because he believed children deserved the real version of things. How she had sat with him in his last weeks and read back to him the same way, without simplifying because he deserved the real version of that too. Cole listened without filling the silences she left. He had learned that about her the silences weren't gaps. They were part of what she was saying. One evening, 8 days after the assembly, she asked him about Ruth. I wasn't surprised she knew. May knew everything, and May and Addie had developed the kind of relationship that forms between women who respect each other's competence, efficient, warm, and genuinely honest. May mentioned someone, Addie said. From a few years ago, she didn't say much. She wouldn't, Cole said. You don't have to tell me. I know. He was quiet for a moment. She was passing through, visiting her sister. We talked for 3 weeks and she went back east. He paused. I let it happen the way it did because I didn't try to stop it. I told myself that was because I was being realistic about what it was. But I think I was scared, he said. I think I decided it was going to end before it ended, so I didn't fight for it. And then it ended, and I spent a year telling myself I'd been right about it all along. Addie looked at him steadily. Were you right? About that specific situation, maybe, he said. About myself, no. I was wrong about myself for a long time. She nodded once. Not in the way of someone accepting an explanation, but in the way of someone confirming something they had already thought was true. I've been wrong about myself too, she said. I spent 2 years after Billings telling myself I was being strong by not needing anyone. That I was protecting myself from what happened to my father. She turned her cup in her hands. I was just lonely, dressed up as independence. There's a difference, Cole said. There's a difference, she said. Independence is choosing to stand on your own because you can. Loneliness dressed as independence is standing on your own because you've forgotten you're allowed to ask for a hand. Cole looked at her. When did you figure that out? About 30 seconds after I said something very brave and very stupid to a man fixing a wagon wheel, she said, and the corner of her mouth moved. Cole felt something loosen in his chest that had been tight for 11 years. Not dramatically, nothing dramatic happened. Just the particular loosening that comes when something that has been held rigid for a long time is finally allowed to be what it is. Addie, he said. Yes. I'd like this to be more than it is, he said. Whatever this is, I'd like it to be a decision, a real one that we both make. She set down her cup. She looked at him with those steady eyes that had never once looked at him with anything other than her full and honest attention. I made that decision 5 weeks ago on a street in front of a wagon wheel, she said. I've been waiting for you to catch up. He looked at her. I'm caught up, he said. Good, she said simply. Outside the creek in the north field ran quiet in the dark. Inside, Pete's lamp was still on in the bunkhouse, visible through the window. Pete, who was definitely still awake and definitely not paying attention. The horses moved softly in the paddock. Cole Barrett, who had spent 11 years protecting himself from exactly this, sat across a table from a woman who had said something brave and stupid and true to a stranger on a street, and understood that the thing he had believed was meant for other people had been sitting across from him for 5 weeks. He didn't say any of that out loud. He didn't need to. The circuit judge arrived on a Wednesday 2 days ahead of schedule on the afternoon stage from the county seat. His name was Judge Harlan Pryor, and he was 60 years old and had the particular manner of a man who has heard a great many legal arguments and is tired of the ones that waste his time. He took a room at May's boarding house, room 1, which had been empty since Farrell left, and told Aldous he would review the assembled record that evening and hold formal proceedings the following morning. Cole did not sleep much that night. Addie, he learned later, did not either. At 10 o'clock in the evening, she knocked on his door. He opened it and found her on the porch in her coat, with her hands in her pockets, which he had come to recognize as her posture when she was doing something that required more courage than it looked like. I couldn't sit in that room, she said. Come in, he said. She sat at the kitchen table, and he made coffee, and they sat in the ordinary quiet of two people who have run out of things to plan and are left with only the waiting. Pete had gone to bed. Hob was in the bunkhouse. The house was entirely quiet, except for the fire and the sound of the wind picking up outside. If the judge dismisses the claim, she said, what happens to the Billings names on the record? The territorial attorney general has them, Cole said. Whether they act is separate from what happens here tomorrow. I know. She looked at her cup. I need them to act. Not for me, I've made peace with what happened to my father. But there were 7 other families, 8 counting hours. Some of them are still carrying it. The record exists now, Cole said. That's what didn't exist before. Before there was nothing. Now there's a documented pattern with names and dates and an assembly record from a Montana town. That's what a case is built from. It's slow, she said. It is, he agreed. But it's real, and it stays. She looked up at him. Something in her expression shifted not toward sadness, but toward the particular kind of acceptance that is not resignation. The kind that says, I know this is how it works, and I can live with how it works, and I'm not going to let how it works make me stop fighting. My father would have liked you, she said. Cole was quiet for a moment. Tell me something about him, he said. Something he would have said. She thought about it. He used to say that the point of teaching wasn't to give people information. The point was to give them the right questions, because questions outlast answers. She paused. He asked very good questions. Like what? He asked me once when I was about 12. What is the difference between a fact and a truth? I thought I knew the answer. I gave him the obvious one: a fact is provable, a truth is felt. She smiled faintly. He shook his head. He said a fact is something that exists. A truth is something that matters. Some facts are truths. Some facts are just facts. And some truths have no facts attached to them at all. Cole looked at her. What did you think he meant? I didn't know then, she said. I think I know now. She met his eyes. Some things are true before you can prove them. The fire settled in the grate. The wind moved outside. The night held itself quietly around the two of them. Cole looked at the woman across the table, the woman who had ridden into Red Willow with dust on her skirt, and grief she hadn't finished yet, and enough courage to say something irreversible to a stranger, and understood with the particular clarity that comes when a fact becomes a truth, that whatever was sitting between them had been real from the moment it started. He had just been the last one to trust it. You should stay, he said, not as an invitation, as something more than an invitation. She held his gaze for a long moment. I'm planning to, she said. Judge Harlan Pryor held formal proceedings the next morning in the town hall, with Aldous present as the assembly record keeper and 4 downstream ranchers in the benches as interested parties. The judge read the complete record in silence, first 40 minutes of reading, during which the room held its breath and nobody spoke, and Cole sat beside Addie and watched a man he had never met hold the entire shape of the last 3 weeks in his hands. When Pryor looked up, he looked at Cole first. Mr. Barrett, the debt notice you never acknowledged this claim made no payment and made no communication with the filing party. No, sir, the bank name doesn't exist and hasn't since 1881. The letter from the Territorial Receiver's Office confirms that. Pryor set it aside. The title defect claim. He looked at the Helena confirmation. The water rights filing. Original land grant condition registered, 1863, renewed, 1879. He read the key clause aloud, the same clause Pete had read at the assembly. He set it down. Miss Monroe. Addie sat forward. Your written reconstruction of the ledger page, you saw this document in the respondent's room during the period in question. Yes, sir? And your father's account is among the Billings cases documented here. Yes. Pryor looked at her for a moment. The look of a man assessing not the content, but the person behind it, the quality of the attention, the character of the presentation. You understood when you came to this town what you were walking into. Not entirely, she said. I came here to start over. I found him here. Once I found him, I had a choice about what to do with that. And you chose to document rather than confront. I chose to be useful, she said. Confrontation without evidence doesn't stop men like this. It just moves them along. Pryor nodded once slowly. He looked at Vera Hutchins' statement. He read it without comment. He said it with the rest. Then he looked at the assembled record as a whole. The debt notice, the bank letter, the Helena confirmation, the ledger reconstruction, the assembly testimony. Vera's statement, and he was quiet for a long moment. The title defect claim is dismissed, he said. The basis is fraudulent. The filing party lacks standing and the water rights attached to this property are confirmed as protected under original territorial grant. and cannot be subject to private title dispute. He looked at Cole. Your deed is clean, Mr. Barrett. Your water is secure. The room breathed. Caleb Marsh said, "Thank God," audibly, and nobody minded. The record of Douglas Farrell's operating pattern will be forwarded to the Territorial Attorney General and to the Federal Circuit Court in Helena. Pryor continued. I am also noting in my judicial record the names of the Billings individuals documented in Miss Monroe's testimony. If any of them wish to file claims against Farrell or the Meridian Consortium, this record constitutes supporting evidence. Old Warren Fitch, sitting in the back bench, pressed his fist against his knee and nodded to no one in particular. Is there anything further? Pryor said. Aldous stood. One matter, he said. The town would like it formally noted for the record that this investigation was initiated and substantially conducted by two private citizens of Red Willow, acting without any authority other than their own conscience. He looked at Cole, then at Addie. The town would like that on record. Pryor looked at both of them. Something moved in his expression, not quite a smile, but close. Noted, he said, and entered. Outside the town hall. Afterward, the morning was bright and cold, and the kind of clear that comes after a long tension lifts. The downstream ranchers came to shake Cole's hand. Caleb Marsh, who gripped hard and said nothing because he didn't need to. The Dunnigan brothers, who said a great deal. Warren Fitch, who took Cole's hand in both of his shaking ones and said, Your uncle was a good man. You're doing right by him. Cole said thank you and meant it in a way he couldn't entirely express. May was there. She had not been in the proceedings, she hadn't been needed, but she had been outside the door, and she came in afterward and found Addie and said something quietly to her that Cole didn't hear. Addie listened, and then her eyes went bright for a moment, and she blinked it back with the controlled discipline of a woman who has learned that crying in public is sometimes permissible, but not always chosen. What did she say? Cole asked when May had gone. She said my father would have been proud, Addie said. Her voice was steady. And that room 3 is mine as long as I want it at the friends and family rate. A pause. She said there is no friends and family rate. She made it up just now. Cole looked at her. She's very fond of you, Addie said. She's known me since I was a difficult 26-year-old who didn't know how to ask for help, Cole said. Some things change, Addie said. Some things do, he said. Pete appeared at his elbow with the specific timing of a man who has been waiting for the right moment. Hobb fixed the south gate, he said. The one that's been wrong since March. Cole blinked. He fixed it. Took him 2 hours. Said it needed doing, and you'd never get around to it this week, so he did it. Pete paused. He also cleaned the tack room. I don't know what's gotten into him. He's celebrating, Addie said. Pete looked at her. He doesn't know he's celebrating. That's the best kind, she said. Pete considered this with great seriousness, and then nodded and went back to wherever Pete went when he wasn't being useful, which was not very far. 3 weeks after the judge's ruling, Addie Monroe moved her things from May's boarding house to the Barrett ranch. It was not a dramatic move. She had accumulated in her months in Red Willow the particular collection of a woman who travels practically books tools of her trade, one good dress and a box of her father's things that she carried herself and did not ask anyone to help with. Cole helped with everything else. The trip took 1 wagon and 1 afternoon. When the last box was inside, Cole stood in the front room and looked at the way the house had already changed. Not dramatically, not yet, but in the way a house changes when it stops being the home of one person and becomes the beginning of something shared. A book on the table that wasn't his. A second hook by the door. It's a small house, he said. It's a fine house, Addie said. I've been meaning to add a room on the east side for years. Better light in the mornings. I like mornings, she said. I know, he said. You're always up before I am. She looked at him with the precise, warm attention she brought to everything. You could build it this fall, she said, before the ground freezes. I could, he said, if I had help. You have help, she said simply. They married in October, 4 months after the judge's ruling on a Saturday morning that was cold enough for breath to show, and bright enough that the mountain range was sharp and clear on the horizon. The night before, neither of them slept much. Cole lay awake in the bunkhouse, a concession to form that May had gently insisted on, and that Addie had agreed to, with a private amusement she hadn't bothered to hide. Listening to the wind move through the grass and the creek run quiet in the north field, he got up before 4. Lit the lamp. Sat at the table in the bunkhouse, and thought about the 12 years he had spent on this land alone, and what that had cost him, not in suffering exactly, but in the particular poverty of a life that is only accountable to itself. He thought about a man named Farrell standing on a road and choosing him because the isolation was visible. He thought about how loneliness can become so familiar that you mistake it for preference. He heard the door. Addie came in from the cold, with her coat pulled tight and her hair loose, and the look of a woman who had also been awake for a while and had decided to stop pretending otherwise. She sat down across the table without ceremony. "I can't sleep," she said. "Neither can I," he said. They looked at each other across the table in the lamplight. Outside the ranch was dark and quiet, and entirely theirs. "Are you afraid?" she asked. "No," he said. Then more honestly, "A little. Not of this, of what I'll do wrong. What I won't notice in time. What I'll be too slow to fix." He looked at his hands on the table. "I've been alone long enough that I don't always know what I'm missing until it's already gone. Cole." She put her hand over his. "You noticed the gray gelding's hip when everyone else saw a difficult horse. You knew I was telling the truth when a whole corner of your mind was telling you to doubt me, and you chose the truth anyway." She pressed her hand down gently. "You notice things. You're just not used to noticing things about yourself." He looked at her hand on his. "I'm afraid of one thing," she said. "Not of tomorrow. I'm afraid of the version of myself that spent 2 years not asking for help, and almost convinced herself she didn't need any. I don't want to be her again." She met his eyes. "I need you to tell me when I'm doing that. When I'm carrying something alone that I don't have to carry alone." "I'll tell you," he said. "And I'll tell you when you're building a wall," she said. "Because you do that too. You get quiet in a particular way, and the wall goes up, and you think it's invisible." "It's not invisible." "It's very visible," she said. "To me." He turned his hand under hers and held it properly. Outside, something moved in the grass. An animal, a night sound. The ordinary life of the land going about its business in the dark. "Addie," he said. "I've been thinking about something your father said. The thing you told me." "Which thing?" "Some truths have no facts attached to them." He held her gaze. "I knew the night I rode you back to town, the first time, the night you told me about your father's debt notice. I knew then that this was going to matter. That you were going to matter." He paused. "I didn't have a single fact to attach to it. I just knew." She looked at him in the lamplight, and her eyes went bright, the same way they had gone bright outside the town hall when May had spoken to her. Except this time, she didn't blink it back. "That's the truth part," she said softly. "That's the truth part," he agreed. They sat at the table until the lamp burned lower and the dark began to soften toward gray, and neither of them tried to sleep again, and it was enough. The wedding was small by any measure and complete by everyone that mattered. Reverend Cates officiated in the town hall, which Addie had chosen over the church because the town hall was where the fight had been won, and she wanted her marriage to begin in a place that already knew what she was made of. May had brought flowers. Actual flowers dried and tied with ribbon that she had been collecting since August with a quiet determination nobody had questioned. Pete wore his good coat, which Cole had not known he owned. Hob had polished his boots to a shine that was frankly alarming. Caleb Marsh came. The Dunnigan brothers came. Warren Fitch came, and brought his wife who had died 5 years ago, in the sense that he brought her photograph in his breast pocket and pressed his hand over it once when he sat down, which was his private language and nobody else's business. Vera Hutchins came. She stood at the back of the room, and Cole saw her there and held her gaze for a moment, not warmly, not coldly, but with the particular acknowledgement of a man who does not forget what someone did, and also does not require them to keep paying for it forever. Vera pressed her lips together and nodded once and looked at the front of the room. When Reverend Cates reached the vows, Addie turned to face Cole fully. She had the expression she used when she was doing something that mattered, and she knew it present unhurried entirely here. Cates read the words. Cole said them. His voice held. Then it was Addie's turn. She began. I take you, Cole Barrett. She stopped, not because she hesitated, not because she wavered, because she wanted to feel the weight of each word before she gave it, the same way she had pressed her hand flat against the gray gelding's neck to feel the truth of him before she spoke to it. She wanted this, the specific gravity of what was being said in this room with these people, with this man in front of her, who had spent 11 years alone and had finally stopped treating his own happiness like a risk he couldn't afford. She started again from the beginning, and this time she said every word like she meant each one separately and all of them together, and she did not rush, and she did not look away. When she finished, the room was very quiet. May made a sound that she immediately suppressed and that Pete pretended not to notice. Warren Fitch pressed his hand against his chest where the photograph was. Hob Sellers, who had polished his boots and showed up and didn't know he was celebrating, stood very straight and blinked twice. Reverend Cates said the final words. Cole and Addie looked at each other in the particular way of two people who have just made an irreversible decision and are finding it feels exactly like they hoped it would. Cole took her hand. She squeezed it once, not demonstratively, just precisely the way she did everything. The way she had pressed her hand flat on the fence post when she needed to steady herself. The way she had held her handwritten notes from Farrell's room and committed them to memory because someone had to. The way she had stood on a street in front of a wagon wheel and said something brave and stupid and entirely true. The room that Cole built on the east side of the house was finished before the first snow. It became the following spring a proper office, Addie's desk, her ledgers, the careful records she kept for every horse that came through the Barrett ranch. Because that was what the ranch became, a place known in the valley for working with horses that had been damaged or given up on, for taking in animals that other operations had decided were lost causes and returning them sound. It was not a grand enterprise. It was not famous beyond a few counties. But it was real, and it was useful, and it was entirely theirs in the way that things are yours when you have built them with your own hands and your own thinking and the daily choice to keep building. The 8 families from Billings, 7 of them in the end, because one had moved beyond reach, received formal notification from the Territorial Attorney General's office in the spring of 1887 that an investigation had been opened into the Meridian Land Consortium's operations. 3 of them filed civil claims. It was slow and imperfect, and the kind of justice that doesn't feel like enough when you're inside it. But it moved. It moved because a woman had sat down in a room in Red Willow, Montana, the night after a fraudulent assembly, and written out everything she remembered from a ledger page by candlelight. Douglas Farrell was found in Wyoming 18 months later, operating under a third name. The Red Willow record was among the documents submitted to the territorial court. He did not go to trial. He made a settlement agreement that cost him everything he had accumulated and left him without the resources to start the scheme again. It was not the prison sentence that some people thought he deserved, but it was the end of it. Addie received the notification on a Tuesday morning in late 1887. She read it at the kitchen table with Cole across from her drinking coffee and watching her face. She read it twice, set it down, picked up her coffee. "It's done," she said. "How does that feel?" Cole said. She thought about it honestly. "Like a door closed," she said. "Not the way a door closes when you slam it, the way it closes when you walk through and it clicks shut behind you." She looked at the notification, then at Cole. "My father deserved better than this took, but it's something." "It's something," Cole agreed. She folded the notification and set it on the table and looked at her husband in the morning light that came through the east window of the room he had built for her. And she did not cry, and she did not perform the moment, and she did not try to make it larger than it was. She picked up her coffee and said, "The bay mare needs her hind shoes checked. Can you ask Hob?" "Already told him," Cole said. She looked at him. I noticed she was favoring it yesterday, he said. I don't always miss things. No, she said, and the corner of her mouth moved. You don't. Cole Barrett thought sometimes in the years that followed about the afternoon he had crouched in the dirt outside Granger's feed store, fixing a wagon wheel, and said something clumsy and sincere to a woman he hadn't met yet. Some cowboy's going to be blessed with you someday. He had meant it as a compliment. He had meant it as a small and passing recognition of something worth recognizing. He had expected a polite smile and the end of a conversation. He had gotten instead from a woman who was tired of being careful, the truest thing anyone had ever said directly to his face. I was hoping it would be you. He thought about that sometimes. About the precise courage it took to say an irreversible thing out loud when the only guarantee was that it was true. No certainty about how it would land. No assurance of the outcome. Just the decision that the truth was worth more than the safety of keeping it in. He had spent 11 years being safe. 11 years of a life that was good and lean and honest and entirely missing the thing that made it mean something beyond itself. She had changed that with 9 words on a street in Red Willow, Montana, in the autumn of 1886, and every day of what followed. The gray gelding, moving clean, the east room full of morning light, the creek running through the north field, the bay mare with her shoes checked the 8 families and the attorney general, and the slow grinding motion of justice that doesn't feel like enough, and is more than nothing every day of what followed, was the answer to a question she had been brave enough to ask first. Some cowboy had been blessed. He had known exactly which one. He had just needed someone with more courage than him to say it out loud.